Welcome in to Check the Mic. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson. We're live on YouTube. And happy Mock Draft Monday, everybody. It's time for another mock draft. It's my turn, Sam. You did your mock draft last week. The whole show's mine. You just sit there, press some buttons in the mock draft simulator, and I'll, go monologue for the next 3 hours here.
How come I'm still operating your mock draft?
Don't worry about it.
Okay.
You've been good doing the button. Why am I still doing all the ad reads?
I haven't been good. I accidentally pressed the button. I accidentally drafted Will Campbell.
That's true. That's true. You did have one mishap a few weeks ago, but don't want to mess with anything here. So I'm going to let you press the buttons for me. All right, you be my assistant. Just like when I'm real GM, you can run the card in for me when I make my picks.
I can be the guy on the phone.
Yeah, you be the card guy. You can be on the phone. You'll be a key component on the behind the scenes YouTube videos that the teams put out. You'll be a star. I'll make you a star.
Cappy, there's no card anymore, right? Like that was only in Radio City or whatever. Now it's all surely by phone or fax or whatever they're still using in the NFL office.
I hope it's fax. I hope they're faxing in the pick here. So mock draft today. We'll start with mug check, of course. What are you drinking out of today, Sam?
It's just Old Faithful.
Old Faithful. Same here. Got my Old Faithful. Got my Yeti. Just replenished straight out of the thermos. Big cup number 2 to get me through, who knows, the next 2 to 3 hours of mock drafting here. I hope you do have, we'll have a little rebuttal, right? We'll have a little back and forth. I can't do the whole thing myself.
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll see how it goes. At the top, really quick to remind everybody, we're still waiting on Check the Mic's studios. Probably not going to get in by draft time. We were hoping not in by draft time. So we'll still be here. But the most important thing is we're here on the YouTube channel, on the Check the Mic YouTube channel. We've got a lot more people following, subscribing in recent weeks. Be sure to hit that subscribe button because you're going to want to be with us the entire draft weekend. We want to be your first, second, third screen. Doesn't matter. Just put us on Thursday night, Friday night. We're live all throughout the draft. And then we're going to be live right after the draft, recapping it, putting it into audio world. And hours and hours of content all throughout draft weekend. Hope you join us.
Yeah, we'll be there all through the draft, basically from start to finish.
All right, man. You ready to go? You want to fire up the MDS?
It should already be fired up on the basis that it was a minute ago.
Oh, there it is. Let's go.
What kind of mock draft are you doing? Is this, you're plugged in now? Is this what Steve's hearing? Are you an insider, or is this what Steve would do as general manager? What are we talking about here?
No, my inside info is tricky, you see, because there may be some teams that want my insights behind the scenes. So I can't give away too much insider info. I think I'm going to, and historically I've been a Steve's the GM, complete GM. I'm not going to go that full route here. So I'm going to do the halfway house. I'm going to go a little hybrid, a little bit of me, GM, a little bit of, where things are trending. And my new favorite one, Sam, is, all the fan sites that are like, look, we've done all the research. Here's who our team is picking. There's one of those. I'm going to drop one of those in there. I'm just going to believe the fan sites that they've done the research about their team. They know the tendencies on the team. They've been reading all of the coverage, and they know. So I might even drop some of those in there as well.
There would be, it's an interesting. I would like to see an overall mock draft composite from all of the in-depth research. This is what this team does tendency-wise. This is their parameters. These are the they will only look at cornerbacks with arms longer than 31.5 inches, like all that kind of stuff, right? You mash that all together. What does a full first-round mock draft look like?
I would love that. I mean, if we have enough people that have their own favorite fan site and they've got some good history, I'd love to know what that would look like. I don't think we have time to do one of those this year.
Yeah.
But I think
to be clear, I'm not putting it together, but I would like. I would be interested in reading such a thing.
I would be too. The last thing, by the way, this Wednesday we'll have Dane Brugler on the show. We're going to start at 10 a.m. So starting a little bit early. We've already had a ton of emails come in. The emails are your predictions for the draft. And we want them to be bold, right? Like, what are your bold predictions, including your team ones? I love the team ones when it's like, I know my team. I've researched my team. They will definitely do this. They will definitely not do that. And let us know. You can put a pound of coffee on the line, whatever it may be. We'll put some Check the Mic merch on the line. If we accept your bet or your prediction, that'll all be on Wednesday's show. We'll go through those. We'll put all of our accepted bets out there. and then that's it. I mean, we might have a week to add a couple more here and there, but that's all for this Wednesday. So this Wednesday, Dane Brugler, and then our listener bet. So be sure to email us right now. Check the mic at the33team.com. Get them all in before Wednesday. All right, man, you good to go?
Yeah, let's go.
Chat's saying there's a ton of smoke. Sam, tell the people. I inhale it. I inhale the smoke, Sam. I inhale all the smoke before the draft. I buy into all of it. So easily influenced here.
Yeah, you buy anything that anybody is selling, effectively.
That's right.
So you're the kind of person that, like, if you're walking through the supermarket and there's one of those people with the clipboards, you know, are you changing your gas supplier every 3 months just because the guy talks to you and you're like, well, that sounds like a good deal?
No, because that involves small talk and, you know, real life interaction that I'm always trying to avoid such things. Other than with the fans, I've run into a lot of fans over the last few months. We see you guys at airports, rental cars. I see you guys at grocery stores. I am good with that, right? There was a guy at Whole Foods a couple weeks ago, big Mike Renner fan. Appreciate the fans and the small talk, not the clipboard people. I go the other way. All right. You ready?
Yeah, let's go.
Titans at 1, Cam Ward, Miami.
Yeah.
All right.
Should probably hit start draft.
Start draft. Let's go, Cam Ward. Let's get that out of the way.
Done.
Again, we've discussed it quite a bit. We'll get into more detail on draft night. Everything we believe about Cam Ward and his fit for the Titans, but you know, it's what I would do at this point. Take a shot at who I think has the highest upside at quarterback and go from there. Browns at 2. Now, this is where it already gets tricky here, Sam, versus, you know, what I would do versus where I think it's going to go. So, as I said, in the past, I liked to always play GM and say, well, I would definitely take Shedeur. I mean, it's too important to take a quarterback and figure that out, and rather than a non-QB position. But it does seem like it's trending pretty strong here as Travis Hunter at 2 and Abdul Carter at 3. For the Browns and Giants. So I think I'm going to lean that way. There's also a part of my evaluation in there where I think there's probably a tick below, Shedeur's maybe a tick below Cam Ward and maybe closer to the next tier of quarterbacks. So I think that's okay. That's acceptable. So I'm probably going to go non-QB here. What did you go? I can't remember what you did last week. Did you do the Hunter Carter back-to-back here?
Yeah, well, last week, that was sort of, I think, the start of when the Shedeur sliding thing, you know, really started to gain some traction. So I think I specifically wanted to do that in a mock draft because all of our ones, basically up until that point, I think had been QB heavy at the top, you know, without a Shedeur slide. So I think we wanted to do something that had that happening just to see what the rest of the first round looks like.
Yeah, I kind of want to play that game as well. And here's the thing. I know. So the Browns just signed Joe Flacco, and they've already traded for Kenny Pickett. The Giants signed Russell Wilson, and they already signed Jameis Winston. And so you and I famously say, right, on this show, so-and-so on the team, right? Joe Flacco's not going to keep me from drafting Shedeur Sanders, right? Russell Wilson's not going to keep me from drafting this quarterback, which is true. But both teams, especially the Browns, right? The Browns know they have a chance to get Shedeur. They don't have to trade up. They know 100% sure if they want Shedeur Sanders, they get him. And they still traded for Kenny Pickett and signed Joe Flacco. And the Giants probably have a shot at Shedeur, and they still signed Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson. Why do both? Right? It's not just why sign. Both teams have brought in 2 veteran quarterbacks. That has to mean something, right? That has to mean they're probably not drafting a guy high. They'll draft someone later, but probably not higher. Yeah.
Yeah. Or that the book on Shedeur Sanders is he can't start day one like that. I mean, bringing in 2 veterans makes sense because, I mean, Jameis Winston in particular, and I mean, the Browns, well, like, but Winston's contract is a backup contract, right? So their quarterback room, all that means if you're drafting a quarterback is the quarterback is QB3. He's just not playing right away. Like Russell Wilson is the starter, Jameis Winston is the backup, and Shedeur Sanders is the future. Now, it could also mean, you know, we think we're set, and if we're drafting a quarterback, it's a developmental guy lower down, and we're just going to roll the dice. But it could also simply mean that we are going to have available to us, you know, 1 quarterback effectively of the guys at the top of this draft, and we don't think that guy can start right away. So it's possible that's the read on it, or simply that they don't believe that there's a quarterback at the top of this draft.
The other development that I don't even know if we've been on the air since this happened was in New Orleans, where Derek Carr was reportedly dealing with a shoulder injury that could affect his season. So I don't know exactly what's happened. Remember when the betting lines went toward New Orleans being the most common favorite, or the favorite for Shedeur Sanders? Was that based off inside information? I don't think Derek Carr just like blew out his shoulder last week. There was probably something going on. Information got to the sports books enough. I don't know, but the first report officially came out last week. So now the Saints are sitting there at 9, and that's where you went. I mean, that's where the smoke has been around the Saints, but now even more so with Derek Carr potentially out for the season. So is there an opportunity for the Saints? Would they trade up at this point? Are they competing against anybody, or is it just, hey, Shedeur's probably going to slide, and it's probably just the Saints at 9 unless someone wants to leapfrog them?
And also, by the way, I mean, it's mid-April for an injury to be threatening his entire season. I mean, that's a catastrophic injury. Like, what has he done to himself?
I don't know. And when did they know?
And how did he do it?
This wasn't a shoulder coming out of last season, right? He wasn't hurt with a shoulder when he got.
No, it was the oblique injury, like Quinn Ewers.
So he's rehabbing, and he's, I don't know,
just like obliterates his shoulder.
I don't know. Rehab's supposed to be a lot better for your shoulder and elbow these days. I don't know what's going on. Sounds serious.
As a man who experiences some acute shoulder pain every now and again from my football playing days, I can relate. But I've never just been doing something in the gym and then, oh, by the way, that's my next 6 months done. Like
you like Derek Carr,
forget about it.
You and Derek Carr both throw about 60 miles an hour, as we proved on that video. You with a baseball, him with a football. So pretty much, I mean, we might need to do a separate video breaking down shoulder injuries with Sam. So I'm just saying that's another. So let's just to finish up the Shedeur Sanders conversation. Here's where I'm leaning, Sam. Browns Giants at 2 and 3. I think I'm going to go non-quarterback, and then I'm going to consider now, because the Saints might be QB needy. Are they all of a sudden in this Aaron Rodgers sweepstakes discussion? Would they bring in Rodgers? So now the Steelers, who seemed like the only team in the mix for Rodgers, are they now are the Saints now playing in that world? And then the Steelers need to think about trading up for Shedeur Sanders. Do they need to, if they actually really want Shedeur, do they need to trade up ahead of the Saints? Maybe that's where the mock goes, just to make it fun here 2 weeks out. I'm just rooting for fun on that Thursday night, Sam. I'm rooting for a lot of fun.
Right, always. I mean, but this is the interesting thing about Shedeur, is that it feels like the spectrum on him is getting pretty wide from, people that think he does belong in this top conversation and you should take him at the top if you need him, to people that don't believe he's, a day one quarterback and you shouldn't be drafting him anywhere near the top of this draft. And if that sort of opinion starts to gather steam, or if that's the opinion within NFL buildings, I mean, if the teams at the top of this draft who are the most quarterback needy are passing on him, there's every chance that the rest of the teams that are, maybe less quarterback needy or just as quarterback needy, but lower down in the draft, will pass on him as well. So, if Cleveland and the Giants pass on him, you're the Saints at number 9, all of a sudden you're like, well, Derek Carr's shoulder doesn't exist anymore. We might need a starting quarterback. But if 2 teams ahead of you just concluded he's not a starting quarterback right now, are you even taking him at 9 just because you need a quarterback, or are you going somewhere else? Same with the Steelers. If they don't get Aaron Rodgers and they're picking it in, where they're picking, then this is where they went wrong with the Kenny Pickett thing. If two or three teams ahead of them already have concluded that he's not capable of starting, just because you need a quarterback, are you like, well, we got to do it just like we did with Kenny Pickett, take him?
I get your point. I think it's fair, right? There's some sort of wisdom of the crowds, consensus that does kind of matter, right? I mean, that's, as I tweeted out the other day, this reminder, haven't we learned not to be overconfident in our QB evaluations? And we talk about this a lot. And look, there's 2 ways to handle that, Sam. The overconfidence is, I definitely know this is the guy, I'm going to take him. But the overconfidence goes the other way too, that if I don't think he's the guy, that I still take him because I don't want to be overconfident that I'm right and he might not be the guy. same. I will defend the Kenny Pickett move. I know your point. Oh, maybe it was around early and you just didn't read the room. You didn't read the draft board well enough. Fine. But the alternative is the Steelers have like a starting cornerback now instead and still had the same horrible quarterback situation, the same uncertainty, right? The Jets weren't set back a million years because they drafted Russell Wilson. They were set back, 1 year. And then they're still in the same spot where they need a quarterback. But the alternative is what? So I still think that the uncertainty means you should take those chances.
Well, that's the thing. Like the sin in drafting Kenny Pickett is not drafting Kenny Pickett. The sin is putting yourself in that position in the first place. Like, I don't, maybe they could have played the game and gone, well, nobody else is going to touch this guy to the third round. Let's try and get him in the second. But like, you need a quarterback. He's the quarterback. You have to just take him because you don't know. Somebody else might be crazy the way you are and draft him in the second round. Then you just lost and you have no quarterback at all. So I understand that entirely. But the problem is putting yourself in that position in the first place where you basically have to take one because you don't have one at all. And that's the problem. So yeah, but it is interesting if it is like the Kenny Pickett thing where teams view this as Cam Ward is the guy, Cam Ward's going number one. After Cam Ward, we don't believe there's a starting quarterback in this draft. If that's the case, and arguably 4 teams are in a position of needing a starting quarterback heading into this draft, I don't know what you do, because 2 of them evidently are concluding, well, okay, 2 of them have a different conversation because they are not just debating, is this guy a starting caliber quarterback? They're also debating the opportunity cost of passing up on a theoretical blue chip player, Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, the consensus blue chip defenders in this draft, right? So the Browns and the Giants have a slightly different conversation where they're saying, is Shedeur a starting caliber quarterback? Yes or no. But also, is he worth passing up on the blue chip talent that is Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter? Yes or no. Once you get beyond those guys, teams like the Saints and the Steelers are just in the is he a starting caliber quarterback? Yes or no conversation. But if they conclude the answer to that is no, what do they do? Because they could both need quarterbacks.
Then they're probably in the development. I mean, look, the Saints, if we were running the Saints, we would try to take a little bit of a reset year, right? After 12 years of pushing the cap and going for it, we'd say, hey, it's fine. It's a reset year. And this coincides nicely with this Derek Carr shoulder injury. And oh, by the way, Arch Manning might be coming out next year. And, Saints legend, Archie Manning. Just saying.
Like the greatest prospects of all time, and we still don't have any idea if he's even good.
We haven't even seen him play yet. And by the way, just a reminder, I think both Peyton and Eli played 4 years at their respective schools. Granted, that was 20 years ago plus. Right. But they might be. But with the NIL money, it's not like he's leaving a ton of money on the table. It is. And Arch went and sat behind Quinn Ewers for 2 years. So it is not inconceivable that he's going to spend 2 years at Texas, right, not just 1. And now we're looking at the class of 2027, which just sounds like a fake year, by the way, when you say it out loud. Class of 2027 draft class with the great DJ Lagway, with Arch Manning, with Patrick Mahomes impersonator. I mean, it could be a great class in 2027. So anyway, a lot of storylines here just because of Derek Carr's shoulder injury. Let's circle back here. All that to be said, I'm going to go with what feels like I haven't checked the odds, but is the chalk picks of Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter at 2 and 3 here?
I think so, yeah.
And this goes with what I've said, right? On the show, I've said if I had a choice between Hunter and Carter, I would lean Hunter. I would go with Travis Hunter and say I need to find out what I can get out of him as wide receiver cornerback. What's also interesting is Andrew Berry, in his comments at the Combine, were very much leaning toward Travis Hunter, the wide receiver, more so than the cornerback. You were early on this, Sam, like when we were in Indy saying, hey, I think a lot more teams might be saying he's a receiver. I don't know how much corner he's going to play, but he's a receiver first, and we want to lean into that skill set. So I think that's what happens with the Browns. Let's go Hunter at 2 and Abdul Carter at 3.
Boom.
And then we have, and then for the Giants, the Carter pick, just to explain it a little bit, do they have too many edge rushers now? Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, and now Abdul Carter? No. They've got this loaded defensive line. I mean, look, if I'm the Browns, I am having a long conversation about the Abdul Carter, Myles Garrett combination and what that can do for defenses. So now the Giants get to have that same conversation. Abdul Carter, Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau. He's heading into year 4 as a first-round pick. He's been okay, kind of up and down through his 3 years. It gives them some flexibility with what they can do, both schematically with all 3 of them on the roster, or if they want to move on from Thibodeau at some point. So, yeah, man, I think you take your blue chip players, and Patriots fans are upset once again because all Patriots fans are rooting for is one of Hunter or Carter to fall. And Abdul Carter, I believe, is in New England taking one of his 30 visits today. So New England is left with the conundrum that we've hated this entire time here at 4.
Well, that's what they're rooting for. The Patriots fans are effectively rooting for any excuse to not have this decision to make, right? If you have one of Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter fall to number 4 overall, you have a reasonable opt-out of this call. You can just say, well, we couldn't pass on the blue chip player. We had to draft Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter. They're too good to turn down. Absent that, you're now stuck in this position where you're picking at number 4 overall. Your 2 biggest needs are still clearly wide receiver and offensive line, and there is no wide receiver or offensive lineman that belongs at pick number 4 overall in this draft, assuming Travis Hunter is not on the board. So you either just overdraft one. I mean, let's call it what it is. You reach for an offensive lineman or a wide receiver and take him at number 4 overall, or you draft another position player that isn't as acute a need or is a lower value because they are quote unquote best player available. And everyone knows that's the way you should draft. So, I mean, that's what I think Patriots fans are rooting for is the excuse to not have to make this decision.
Yeah. And look, we've had this discussion quite a bit, but just to remind people a little bit, Will Campbell, the arm length thing, but a lot of people that hear me speak about this, the people, they say, look, Steve, you like to look at the data and use eliminators, right? How do you eliminate players? Why aren't you doing that with Will Campbell? It's a fair question. But I think the rest of the body of work is good, right? But I've got some reservations, right? We talked about it on the Edge Rush show. Why does Landon Jackson have 2 or 3 clean wins as a pass rusher against Will Campbell? Why does Kyle Kennard from South Carolina? Why does who got him with the spin move a couple times? Like, there's like 4 edge rushers. I'm like, man, this dude took Will Campbell to task. Jared Verse got him a few times back when he was a freshman at Florida State. So there's a bunch of those. But I don't think he's not an arm length outlier. He would just be a wingspan outlier. And is that an outlier, or is it just, hey, these dudes don't get a lot of opportunities? Weird body type for Will Campbell. But overall, he's been a good player. And if I'm going to be, believe in the hype and the whole deal, and those grades, I mean, look at the grades on there. Those game-by-game grades for PFF.
Yeah.
50 against A&M, the 50s against Bama, and the 50s against USC. But the 3-year body of work is strong for Campbell. That still matters to me, right? The 3-year body of work is still strong. Not great. It's not Joe Alt. I thought Joe Alt was as good of a tackle prospect as we've seen in 5 to 10 years. So there's for pick number 4, there's just way more uncertainty here about Will Campbell's projection than there was about Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter. That's why Patriots fans want one of those blue chip guys to fall, right?
Yeah. I mean, so that's the thing. Like, if Will Campbell's tape looked like Joe Alt's tape, this would be fine. There would be no problem. Even if, so let's say Joe Alt has Will Campbell's body, right? But the tape and the production is the same. This is fine. I think you would argue perfectly reasonably, yes, he's a wingspan outlier. He's got the smallest wingspan of any offensive tackle that we've ever seen, effectively, if we're drafting him to play left tackle. But the tape and the production are so good, we don't care. We're taking him at 4, plugging him in, we're good to go. It isn't, though, and that's the problem. It's like Will Campbell's tape is good, but it isn't what Joe Alt's was. Joe Alt, for example, the total number of pressures he allowed went from 11 to 8 to 5 in his 3 years starting. His PFF pass blocking grades went from 76 to 82 to 91. He got better and better every year, and the sort of final year of entering the NFL was like completely elite. There was no game in which he allowed more than 2 total pressures. And most of his games, he didn't allow any, right? Campbell doesn't have that. That's the problem that he's dealing with, is not only have you got, what are we talking about with the arm length and the wingspan thing? Like, number one, it was difficult to pin down because the pro day measurements and the combine measurements, they were different. Number two, we usually focus on arm length, and actually it's his wingspan that's like historical outlier levels. And then number three, arguably his biggest problem is, even if you can get over that, he actually isn't as good a left tackle prospect as some of these other, elite, quote unquote, left tackle prospects we've seen over the last few years, whether it's Joe Alt, whether it's, Penei Sewell, like whoever it is, the top offensive tackle prospect in a given draft, he's not there. So you're already, having to get over a hurdle of like, do we make an exception for this weird body type thing? And then if we do, even if you take that off the table and just say he's met the thresholds, ignore what the numbers are, he's not actually, like, he still isn't arguably worth the number 4 overall pick.
Is this where the draft could get crazy? Because I see the chat talking about it a little bit. Just to answer really quick, was Joe Alt a better prospect than Penei Sewell? Probably not Penei Sewell, but it's those are the 2 best, right? Off the top of my head, last 5 or 10 years, they're up there, similar. Secondly, the Ashton Jeanty buzz for the Patriots, there's not a ton of that buzz, but you've seen that conversation. Could they have that discussion and say, well, theoretically, this is the next blue chip. Let's take this blue chip. And then right now, there are some left tackles projected to go in the late first round. Could the Patriots be a trade back into the first round type of team where they just go Ashton Jeanty or Mason Graham here, and then try to trade back into the first round and grab an offensive lineman? The problem there is, I think if you came out of this draft as the Patriots, you'd rather have a tackle and a receiver on the turn, right? There'll be good value on the turn in the second round at receiver, and you could have those 2 offensive players. They already spent a ton on defense during this free agent period. I think they probably want to go tackle and then receiver. So I think I'm probably just going to land at Will Campbell again, despite all of these discussions. I still think he's a very good prospect. I think it's fine. But we're in this world where just because they're picking him at 4, you want to lose some of that uncertainty. But would you be okay taking Will Campbell if you were the Niners at 11 or something, like just 7 picks later? Probably. Yeah. But it just feels worse because it's at 4, and the 2 guys going above seemingly have, fewer red flags, Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter. So it's the first guy that has more red flags, and you're the team picking him. But it's a massive need, and he's still, I think, the best tackle prospect in the draft.
But it's also, it's that opportunity cost thing, right? If you're the 49ers picking 11, you would assume that by the time they pick, there's nobody left on the board that you could construct an argument is a blue chip player. That's not the case when the Patriots are picking. It's just that the blue chip players are, number one, positions of quite low value, and number two, you have this acute need that isn't a blue chip player. So it's the 2 things working in direct concert that are both not best practice when it comes to drafting. Whereas even if the 49ers are picking, 7 picks later, both of those things are probably no longer true. Like, number one, all the blue chips are probably gone. Number two, the guy that you're picking is probably solid value at that point, even if, you're saying he's not this blue chip sort of cast iron slam dunk tackle prospect.
All right, let's do it. Sorry, Patriots fans. We're doing the Will Campbell thing.
Again. Put
him at left tackle. Again. It's 360 days of projecting Will Campbell to the Patriots. And it really hasn't changed since last year at this time.
Well, blame them.
Blame them. They haven't stopped.
As long as Vidarian Lowe is going to be the name at the top of the depth chart at left tackle, right? As long as that's the case, you can't pass on a tackle at the top of the draft.
The other, some questions about Armand Membou, who played right tackle at Missouri. I'm okay with flipping a player to the other side. Although I do think that hurts the development time just a little bit, right? We saw J.C. Latham have to flip, and, I used to be the advocate for just draft a tackle, put him at left or right, doesn't matter. I feel like it almost has gone overboard where it's like, Alt goes from left to right last year, and Talise Fawanga goes from right to left, and J.C. Latham goes from right to left. Like, it's still better to keep a guy at the same spot, I think, just for hitting the ground running and everything, right? Even Penei Sewell took preseason plus 7 or 8 games before he really found his footing in the move. So like there is a little bit of risk associated with moving a guy, just not as much as we used to think, 15, 20 years ago.
Well, yeah, the thing I think is it's an unknown factor, right? I think some guys can flip sides and you basically never notice that it happened, right? And I think some guys can't. And the problem is you don't really know until you start messing with it. So most of the time, I think you're okay, particularly when you're doing it at the start of the guy's career. Joe Alt flipping sides, it's fine. But it is an unknown variable that you are sort of throwing into this. It's an extra element of risk that you are throwing into this already risky proposition of the draft is a crapshoot. Everyone's strike rate is low. Why would you voluntarily add a layer of risk on top of that when you don't need to? Now, sometimes you need to because you already have a player, entrenched on the other side, and you just have to do it and hope he's one of the guys that can make the switch fine. But it's definitely like you can't, I think, argue that it's always fine. There are definitely guys that simply cannot play on the other side as efficiently as well, or it will take them time to make that transition. I would say for most guys, it's not a problem. And you can, probably work on the basis that if we're drafting a tackle at the top of the draft, he can move to the other side. And even if he takes all training camp and, maybe a couple of games to get up to speed, it'll be good from very early on. But it's definitely not a guarantee.
I was tempted, Sam, by the way, when I think Will Campbell's a top 5 or 6 player in this draft. I'm not reaching for him. I'm not as worried about the wingspan thing that Renner brought up. I'm not as worried about that. I'm not. So I'm not saying this is Will Campbell, player 20, and boy, we got a left tackle need. I'm debating him and Mason Graham. That's who I'm debating here if I'm the Patriots. Maybe Membou. Is he a better tackle prospect? That's where I'm not reaching massively in my mind for Will Campbell. It's just if he had a slightly different body type, it would feel better. That's how I feel about it. Jags at 5. Is this another chalk pick with Mason Graham? I still love. I just love Mason Graham. The plays with violence, disruptor on the interior. I don't know. I don't know if the Jags are thinking about Ashton Jeanty. I don't know if they're thinking about a top cornerback here. By the way, Will Johnson from Michigan testing today might be, if he coming off of his injury, if he just has a couple good tests, I think he's doing a couple of the agility tests or whatever. If he just looks healthy, maybe his buzz comes back as a top 10 player and he's in the mix here. I mean, that dude, Will Johnson kind of reminded me of the way Asante Samuel used to play, but bigger. Asante's over here all on Twitter telling everybody how he's better than Deion Sanders. And it's like, LOL, come on, Asante. I went back to look. I thought it was a misprint. In 2006, he had 10 picks and 2 pick sixes in the playoffs. I mean, Asante was a turnover machine, but, he'd bite on some stuff. And that's Will Johnson's game. So as much as Travis Hunter looks like a turnover machine at corner, Will Johnson has some of that as well. So I'm just saying, I think if he has a good workout, where's he on the consensus board? He's dropped down to 12. He's been as high as 5. Just saying he might be in the top 10 mix again by the end of the day. But I think Mason Graham be the guy for the Jags. Yeah.
It's sort of annoying because it's been this chalk pick all the way along, but I can't.
Yeah.
If this is the way this draft unfolds, and I've been trying to look for things to, for other ways to go for the Jags, but if this is the way the draft unfolded, I can't see why they would go away from Mason Graham. He's too good a player. It's too big a need. Those two things mesh. Why would you go in any other direction? You can construct an argument that, Tetairoa, McMillan, and this receiving core would be interesting, or, there are other players you could construct an argument would be good signing, good players for them to pick and good additions. But I don't think any of them would be as good a synergy of need plus talent as Graham.
The one other scenario for the Jags that I would be interested in is if they traded down. Now, I don't know who the trade up partner is, but if they traded down, got McMillan, and I love the idea of Tetairoa and McMillan plus Brian Thomas Jr. in that receiving core, trade down, get the extra picks, and grab McMillan. I think that would be a nice scenario for the Jags. I just don't know who's trading up here, right? If we're talking about Shedeur Sanders there's not a blue chip player probably that's getting traded up for, unless you're saying someone loves Ashton Jeanty, right? The Bears just need Ashton Jeanty because they've got all their needs filled on their team and they want to go get him. I don't know if that's going to happen, but who knows? So I don't know if there's a blue chip. Yeah. Or maybe someone loves Mason Graham, right? The D tackle market's going through the roof and the Panthers go get him, right? So the Panthers are like, man, we missed out on Milton Williams. We go get Mason Graham at 5. Let's do an expansion team trade. Panthers and Jags, maybe. And so for the Jags, that scenario would be nice. I think trade from 5 to 8, say, and take McMillan if he's there, and you accumulate an extra pick there. I don't know. That's now that we're talking about it, is that something the Panthers might do?
But if you're, I mean, you would need to love Mason Graham. I think that's the only guy left that anyone is going to trade for. And that, like, those have already been the reports that, teams have been calling, right? Feeling out the idea of trading down. Nobody wants to come up for anybody, right? So and maybe again, this is pre-draft smoke, but I just don't, a lot of these, the natural point we are identifying for, well, this would be a great trade down spot. It's because we just hit a tier level, a tier drop in talent. It's because we just ran out of blue chip players and we don't love the guys that are remaining. And that's the same reason that you're not going to find too many teams phoning up, trying to come back up and get somebody else. So the Jags at this point, we're looking for reasons not to draft Mason Graham. And at that point, I think the obvious thing is to just draft him.
Yeah. And the one thing I meant to mention was, if we're talking trade up candidates, it would, usually it's for a quarterback. Is anybody trading up for Shedeur Sanders? Why at this point? If the Saints want Shedeur Sanders, who are they leapfrogging unless they have good information that the Raiders really would want him, right? I mean, that's maybe the Raiders at 6, but they just locked up Geno Smith. Like, I don't think they're going to do that. I don't think the Jets are going to do it at 7. And then the only other fear might be the Steelers coming all the way from 21. Yeah. But the Steelers don't have a 2 anymore. Like, the Steelers don't. It's not like they're loaded with draft capital to go up into the top 10 here. Because I did consider that, Sam. I was like, maybe Steelers come up to 8. Maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll do that anyway, just to see, just to have some fun here. Let's go Mason Graham, though, to the Jags. And I feel like I'm just chalk all the way through here. At least this is the way things have been trending the last few weeks. What's the chalk pick for the Raiders here at 6?
Jeanty.
Probably Jeanty.
Hard Jeanty. 50% of their draft.
So this is where I hate it, man. This is where I don't think I would do that. But I don't know if I've got a great alternative selection as GM, This is why I didn't want to play GM.
This would be an interesting trade, though. Like, so this is one where you could realistically, like, what if, okay, the Bears would want Jeanty or would like to draft Jeanty, and they, even though they have a couple of second-round draft picks that they could use on running backs, they believe that Jeanty is, sufficiently special relative to the second tier of running backs in this draft class that he's worth acquiring either in the first round or, well, like, what if the Raiders instigated that trade call and said, hey, look, if you don't trade to number 6, we're going to draft Ashton Jeanty. Like, if you want him, you need to draft him with this draft pick. We're prepared to move out of it for the trade. Otherwise, we're basically going to have to take him at this spot because we don't love the alternative options.
I think it's realistic. I don't know if I'm going to do it in the mock, but again, maybe just for the fun of it, Sam, we could do that. I think it's realistic, right? If the Bears are honest about their roster, they just used a first-round pick on a receiver last year. They got DJ Moore and Roma Dunze. They filled all of their offensive line needs. I think they could still use some defensive line depth, but it's not like they haven't attacked that this offseason with Grady Jarrett, Dayo Odeyingbo, a couple draft picks over the last few years who are still developing. They just re-signed Kyler Gordon to go with Jalen Johnson in the secondary. Tyreek Stevenson heads into year 3. We've talked about corner a little bit for the Bears, but it's not like this massive need. I think they're a sneaky play for Jihaad Campbell at linebacker, maybe at 10. But again, there's like the Bears at 10 could easily make the case that Jeanty is the cherry on top of this otherwise solid roster. And if they go get where the Raiders have a few more needs, right? They could use O-line depth and D-line depth, and they absolutely need a corner. Like if the Raiders were able to trade down and get one of the top corners at 10, I think that would feel better for the Raiders rather than Jeanty, despite what Walt might say in the chat here as a Raiders fan.
Yeah, I mean, the Raiders, I think, could go in a bunch of different directions. Like, they could just take Jeanty because he's the last blue chip, quote unquote, available, albeit a blue chip at running back, which may not be as valuable. But they have a bunch of other needs. Like, they could shoehorn a bunch of other players onto this pick and make a decent argument that is a huge area of need. Or they can, if they could convince Chicago, we're drafting Jeanty unless you want him, and trade back those few spots, and then make the selection of a different position more palatable. I think they could do that as well. So I think the Raiders have a decent amount of flexibility with this spot.
Let's do this. Let's do it. Can you work out a trade for me in the sim here? Let's do Bears trade up to 6.
I'm operating the sim. It feels like you need to construct your own trade.
All right. Let me find something here. Let me catch up on my own here. I've got Will Campbell. I'm going to make sure I get the right picks in here. Mason Graham. So the Raiders are going to trade with the Bears. Bears at 10 and 6. But I'm the what's a good? Do you have the charts handy?
According to the Jimmy Johnson trade value chart, which, as we know, is wildly outdated and not a good barometer to use, but just happens to be convenient.
Just still, convenience.
The difference between those two picks is 300 points, which is the equivalent to a low second rounder.
Oh, no, that's tough.
One of the last picks in the second round.
What about no, that's too much, man. That's too much to even project.
So you're going to need to pick balance. You're going to need to give up 72 and something else. 72 is 230. 148 is 40. That's getting you in the ballpark. And then you need to get a 7th bank or something.
No, let's not do it. We're not doing that. We can't. We explored it. Right? When the post-draft press conference, we'll say, hey, we explored this trade. It was just too much. Raiders were asking for too much. So the Raiders are going to take Ashton Jeanty here, Sam. So you got to get into our thought process a little bit here. By the way, I mean, if you're in the chat, like, Steve, you're an idiot. What are you doing? Just do this. Just do that. That's you. Next week, you guys will have your own opportunity. The viewer mock draft, the viewer-listener mock draft. If you're a listener, you're going to have to show up live on YouTube next week. I think we're going to do it next Wednesday, day before the draft. We've got a lot of aggressive things planned. We might have a 3-round mock planned for next week. I don't know how we're going to pull that off within a day, but we might have a 3-round mock next Monday. We got the viewer mock next Wednesday, but that's your time to shine, viewers. Next Wednesday, you guys can pick whoever you want. All right. You don't have to deal with me and my picks, my selections. It's all you next week. But yeah, Raiders were thinking about trading down, but they're going to take Ashton Jeanty at 6, Jets at 7. Now, so I'm interested in, I think the corners, I don't know. I think I always talk about the new regime, their first pick. Like, what's the first pick of the new regime? I always like when it's in the trenches on the offensive line. I think they do too. I think teams like that as well. I think Membou makes a lot of sense here. He is the consensus pick here in the mock draft simulator for the Jets. I think corner could have been considered as well with a guy like Jahdae Barron, but I like Membou at right tackle here for the Jets to replace the great Morgan Moses.
And of course, this doesn't cause the problem of asking him to switch sides. He comes in, he starts at right tackle day one.
Yeah, let's do that. Armand Membou, the Missouri. The question about Shedeur Sanders, I think it's fair to say that the Justin Fields deal is probably as high-end of a bridge quarterback deal as we've seen. It's a high-end bridge quarterback deal. It wouldn't keep you from drafting a quarterback, but I also kind of think it might, from their perspective, right? I think from their perspective. Or they didn't think they were going to have a shot at Shedeur. I mean, yeah, Jets could be a Shedeur landing spot. We're going to go Membou here. Panthers are at 8 here, and I hate this pick for the Panthers.
Why?
I hate this pick. Because I don't know which pass rusher I want.
Okay, but that's like, it's a good pick. It's just that you don't like deciding.
Yeah, I don't like deciding. But this is where you went Jalon Walker from Georgia. Few of us have gone Jalon Walker. I think for this one, though, I've come around to
Ooh.
we did our edge rankings the other day. Tetairoa McMillan is the top guy here. That's interesting. I think they're going to go defense. I think you're hearing
That
enough
might be
about
driven by this.
Yeah, that's driven by he's ranked 3rd on the PFF draft board, and he always looks like the top player there. And
right.
remember,
Trevor is one of the few people out there in the draft community that believes that Tetairoa McMillan is, without caveat, the number 1 wide receiver in this draft. I think most other people believe that if Travis Hunter plays wide receiver, Travis Hunter is clearly wide receiver 1 in this draft class.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more of the mind if you take McMillan in the top 10, I'm fine. But if you get him at 15 to 20, like some people are projecting, I feel like real excited about that. I'm also of the mind that I don't want to take Matthew Golden over Tetairoa and McMillan. There's a lot of that going on right now as well.
Yeah.
Here's the deal for the Panthers. We just did our edge rankings the other day. If you haven't seen the edge rankings, go check out that show on the YouTube channel or in audio. We went through all of our edge rankings. It's a deep edge class. Panthers have a pretty massive need on the defensive line. Tried to address some of it in free agency with some high-end rotational, low-end starters, high-end rotational players. Still a massive need. I'm just going to trust my board here, Sam. Edge 2 for me was Mike Green. So I'm going to throw out some of the uncertainty that we have on the off field here and everything. You had Jalon Walker as your edge 2, and you kind of had that coincide with him at pick 8. I'm going to go Mike Green here. I'm going to go Mike Green from Marshall to the Panthers at pick 8. I think he's the best non-Abdul Carter pass rusher in the draft.
Yep. I mean, I don't hate that. I think that 2-3-4 for pass rushes is very close. I thought about Green at 2. I ended up going with Jalon Walker, but certainly wouldn't argue with that.
All right, so that puts the Saints up on the clock now at pick 9. And am I just going to go back to the consensus with the Derek Carr? Even when Derek Carr was on the roster, Shedeur Sanders was in play here. The only question is, would the Steelers trade up? Would the Steelers trade up to get above the Saints? I was thinking about that, but I don't think the Steelers with no second round pick, I don't think they can make that move.
What does that move look like in terms of? I mean, it's costing them next year's first. There's no way around that.
Yeah, I don't think I want to do that. Like, you have to be, when we talk about the uncertainty at the evaluating quarterbacks, you have to be completely sold to go up and get Shedeur Sanders.
It is something in the region of 550 points, which even this year is like the top of the second round. And if you factor in the inflate, yeah, dude, that's a hefty trade. It's costing you next year's first and probably some more stuff.
With the Panthers, by the way, obviously they already made their pick, but would they consider, like, if the Steelers wanted to come up to 8, the Panthers would have to drop to 21, and in that scenario get a 1 next year? I feel like a still rebuilding Panthers team would leap at that opportunity, right? Drop back 13 spots.
Oh, I feel like the good doctor would be screaming that that's the thing you should be doing if that's on the table.
When you're talking about scouts standing on the table, that would be Eric standing on the table, like, take the extra 1, take the extra 1. We're winning this trade.
Move.
Yes, we're winning this trade. The problem is, that the Steelers 1 next year is going to be pick 21, right? You know exactly what it's going to be. It's
right.
Going to be the same exact spot, probably. Anyway,
but like I said, I think it's got to be a 1 and something else. Like if they're getting next year's 1 and a 3 or something to move down to a spot where you might be able to get the pass rush you want anyway, depending on what their board looks like, or you're in the Tetairoa McMillan range where actually he now represents really nice value. Like I think you take that chance.
So admittedly, Sam, we talked about, I would love, like, if we had the ability to really follow closely all the insiders from all 32 teams, and there's information that gets out there, the players they like and everything. Our friend Nick Underhill, Saints insider, before the Derek Carr injury was like, look, I would love Shedeur Sanders. This is what he's saying, basically paraphrasing. I would love Shedeur Sanders to come to New Orleans for the story. He's like, right. But I just haven't heard anything about him. It's not like there's no smoke around Shedeur. Now, look, some teams completely hide it, right? And they are very good at locking it up, right? They're very good. Famously, the Blake Bortles pick with the Jags. I got to tell this story once a year. Blake Bortles goes number 3 overall to the Jags in 2014. I think we're past the statute of limitations here. Our old coworker, Mike Stober. Anyway, I don't even know if we should name names. It doesn't matter. Names out there. Used to work for he worked for the Jags. It's too late. He worked for the Jags. He said they had a fake draft board that year out there. They had a fake draft board so that nothing leaked. Only like 2 people knew that they were getting Blake, 3 people. It was like owner, GM, head coach, right? Only people who knew. Daniel Jeremiah that year was like out of his mind. He's like, I've got close friends over there, and they wouldn't even let on. Like, they were as tight-lipped as anything to just drop the Blake Bortles bomb at number 3 overall in 2014. So is that possible? Absolutely.
I mean, this is like, remember that Kyle Shanahan, when they made the 3 first-round picks to go up and get Trey Lance, Bobby Slowick was, the pass game coordinator or something at that point. Like, he was in the room, etc. He didn't know who they were picking until like an hour before the draft. Like, Kyle Shanahan, they traded the 3 first-round picks. They'd been up there for however long that happened, but way before the draft. They'd been up there for a while. The reports had been out there, Mac Jones, Trey Lance, whoever. Like, the room didn't know who the 49ers were drafting until an hour and a half or something before they were making that pick. So as much as all this information is out there, and definitely some stuff leaks depending on the organization pretty easily, there are places that do not let it out of that room or out of that extremely, tight-knit group of people. So again, 32 different organizations, 32 different levels of information security in addition to everything else.
So I just wanted to come back to that, right? Nick Underhill saying, I haven't heard these rumblings. Then the Derek Carr thing happened, and it's like, okay, this is way more on the table at this point. Shedeur Sanders with the Derek Carr injury. So I think that's where I'm going to go here, Sam, right? I'm going to take Shedeur Sanders, number 9 for the Saints. Whether Carr was there or not, I was intrigued by this. And I don't know who else would trade up. Do the Rams make this massive trade up for their developmental quarterback behind Matthew Stafford? I don't think the Steelers have enough. Les Snead is the type of guy that has that type of conviction and clearly has lived without first-round picks in the past and could do it again. But I think this is where we are. Shedeur Sanders at 9 to the Saints.
So we talked about there being a fairly wide range of projections on Shedeur Sanders. Like, there are definitely people that look at him and say the flaws in his game, right? The behavior under pressure, the tendency to sort of drift backwards, to try and escape in places that you can't escape, certainly not at the NFL level. These are fatal flaws. These are Achilles heels that will not get better in the NFL. And this is why he will not be a high-end NFL quarterback. In addition to the fact that he has literally 0 elite physical traits. Doesn't have a cannon for an arm, doesn't have elite speed, doesn't have elite athleticism, is not huge. Like, all of those things are, let's call them average, but they're certainly not elite. So those 2 things in concert are why he's a 2nd-round player, and that's where he should be drafted. That's why he won't go at the top of this draft. That's why he'll slide, yada, yada, yada. There are also people out there that go, yes, but his super trait, his super skill, his, elite projection trait is the processing, the accuracy. It's the mental stuff, right? There are definitely people out there in the draft world, the Twitter sphere or whatever, that are like just as militantly sure that, the rest of the industrial draft complex has got it wrong and we're overthinking Shedeur, and actually, just trust the tape. He's been elite. He's elevated. He's a winner, yada, yada. You reckon there's any of those people in the NFL? Like, is there a lunatic out there, a crazy maverick GM who's like, I'm in that camp. I'm in the camp that believes Shedeur is being slept on. He's, he's an elite. He's just a winner. He's an elite mental processor. And actually he belongs at the top of this draft. If that guy is in control of a team that has even a vague need at quarterback, that's an X factor. He could trade. He could do anything.
It's a great point. I'd love to see it. I mean, one thing I would love to know within an organization is when they love a player is how many people within the organization agree with that. Because you're talking about, you say this team loves this player. Well, who? Right? They have his regional scout. They have everyone cross-checking. They've got a college scouting director, a pro scouting director. They have an assistant GM. They have a GM. They have a head coach. They have a quarterback coach. They have an offensive coordinator. Who? Like, do all of them come to the same conclusion on these players? Are they split 50-50? Because what you just described, when we say this team loves this player, are you talking like the 10? Like, there's probably 10 really important evaluators who have the most say on, all the way up to the GM, right? So how much consensus would you need to feel that great about any player, but especially a quarterback? But you're right. I mean, if it takes one team that has that type of conviction, I don't know who that is in the teens in particular, right?
Yeah,
to come up and trade into the top 10. There's no real QB teams.
Yeah, the teams that, I mean, you either desperately need a quarterback. Everyone else is not just like they're sort of very set at quarterback. You know what I mean? Like, the teams that have been Mavericks in the past, well, all of a sudden, like Washington just got their quarterback definitively. All these teams are like very set with a young quarterback that they're 100% sure about, and wouldn't be making that move. Like, it's tough to find a team that would be that kind of gung-ho and desperate is the wrong word, but like that aggressive at going to get their guy once you get beyond this group. I mean, Indianapolis would be the interesting one. Like the Colts sitting at 14 with their now like quarterback battle of like guys that nobody has any confidence in. We all just penciling in Tyler Warren to the Colts. But if Ballard is one of those guys, like what if Ballard thinks actually Shedeur's got the elite mental traits, I believe that he's worth like the number 2 overall pick in this draft, or even the number 1 overall pick in this draft. That's not a large jump for the Colts at 14 to get to 9.
Let me open this can really quick, just because why not? We're an hour in. Let's do it. With the Colts, I'm not trying to overreact to a few fans, but the amount of fans, when I suggested, if Shedeur's going to slide, who are the teams in place? Jets at 7, Saints at 9, Colts at 14, Steelers at 21, Rams at 27, right? They're all in play. Good.
One last one, Seattle.
You keep bringing up Seattle. I still think the Darnold Geno thing, but you're right. I mean, look, I'm not going to write anybody off. I certainly,
but the Darnold, the contract that he signed is a very get-outable contract. Like that could easily turn into a 1-year deal for Darnold if he doesn't play out of his mind. Again, it's all contingent on what you think Shedeur Sanders is. But if John Schneider's over there having run his eval over Shedeur and thinks he's a number 2 overall player in this draft, and he's sitting there, at pick number 18, and Shedeur's available at 8, I mean, you would be crazy not to be asking those questions, right?
You're right. And this is a year removed from the team that spent the most in free agency, got the number 1 free agent quarterback, the Falcons, still drafted a QB. So we're certainly right. We can't never say never. Like the Niners at 11 could be in the mix. Hey, go get Shedeur and you let Purdy walk. Like you at least have those conversations, right? You at least have to think about what that might look like. But if you're the Colts at 14, and I heard the Colts fans loud and clear, I don't know why, but they're like, I won't even follow the team if they draft a quarterback in the first. When it's like, well, your room is year 3 of Anthony Richardson and 1 year of Daniel Jones. Why would you not be in the mix? Now, you could say, I'm sick of this team going from Jacoby Brissett to Carson Wentz to Phillip Rivers to Anthony Richardson, and I missed one in the middle there. Like, I'm just sick of it, right? We just haven't found a quarterback. But, like, that's the reason why you still have to play that game. That's the reason. And you might be an Anthony Richardson supporter and say, just give the kid time. Fine, that's true. Or you might just say, it's time to move on from Anthony Richardson. We picked him at 4 when the guy had no experience and no accuracy, and nothing's gotten better. And he's injury prone too on top of it. Great. But like the point is, all of these teams should be doing their due diligence on all of these quarterbacks. And if the Colts did that, to your point, Sam, or even Seattle, and said, look, we think this guy's a top 5 player. However, the Browns and Giants are up there. One of those teams is definitely going to pick. They're going to come to the same conclusion as us, top 5 player. And now we're 2 weeks out from the draft, and they might not think he's a top 5 player at the top. And the Colts are sitting there at 14, or the Seahawks at 18, and they're thinking, I never thought we'd have a chance at this guy. And now he might drop. So then you might think about making a move. That's where that thought process is. All of those teams, though, Like the Colts would be idiots to not do their due diligence on the quarterbacks. I'm not saying draft one, definitely. I'm saying you got to go all in like you need one because you certainly don't have the long-term answer locked up on your roster.
Right. And it's all contingent. It's that initial eval on Shedeur Sanders. Like none of this is a question if you think he's a borderline first round, second round player. Like you're immediately out on the guy ever. Like you're certainly not trading up to go get him. You're probably not drafting him where you're sitting in the first round at all. But if you are one of those people that believes that actually the elite mental traits of Shedeur Sanders mean he's a top prospect in this draft, there are many more options available. So we're in this world, right? We're picking at number 9 overall. The Saints just grab him in your mock draft. But at that pick number 9, we are assuming it's basically New Orleans or maybe Pittsburgh, 10 picks later, or like nothing, or somebody maybe at the top of the second jumping back into the bottom picks of the first. But the point is, if there is another GM out there, another personnel guy making the decisions who is in that minority, let's put it out there, like it is a minority opinion, but is in that minority that believes Sanders is a top potential draft pick in this draft, there are other X factor teams we are not considering who could be in the market to jump up and grab it.
All right, we got to get the Bears pick in here. By the way, draft night, you and I having all these discussions. We'll review what everybody said. It'll be less hypothetical, right? It'll be like, hey, here's what happened. We're going to be doing this live all night, Thursday night, all night, Friday night, first 3 rounds. And then you never know when we're going to go live on Saturday. So we're just preparing. We're just getting the endurance up here, Sam. We're going to be live for like 6 or 7 hours on Thursday, 6 or 7, 8 hours on Friday, more than that. So we're just getting the endurance up here on a Monday morning. Bears at 10. Could they be a Tetairoa McMillan spot? I don't know. Are Bears fans talking about Tetairoa enough, right? They had Keenan Allen last year. They're letting him walk in free agency. Could McMillan be there with DJ Moore and Rome Odunze? I haven't seen this connection. I've seen the Ashton Jeanty connection. Now he's off the board. I've been of the mind that they should go defensive line. You've kind of said, hey, look, Deo Odeyingbo and Grady Jarrett, some of the moves that they've made over the last couple of years. I said earlier on the show, I think they're a sneaky Jihaad Campbell. I think this is where Jihaad Campbell, I think, is the best linebacker in the draft for Bama, and he could be in the mix for any of these teams that need defensive help. So I'm kind of torn here for the Bears. I'd love to just add another edge rusher, though, even if there's not really a guy that I love at 10 anymore beyond Mike Green.
I mean, that would make sense. Tetairoa McMillan would be interesting. The other spot they've been linked to a reasonable amount is the tight ends. Like this is the earliest. Yeah. Well, maybe not the earliest. I mean, the Jets, but maybe this is a Tyler Warren spot if the Colts or if the Bears decided that he's enough of an upgrade over Cole Kmet. The difference between going from solid to elite potentially is worth the spot there. Or just literally stick to your discipline of best player available regardless of position and just grab who you think the best guy is.
That's my normal discipline. Tyler Warren's number 9 on the consensus board. He's the top remaining player from a consensus board standpoint. Jalon Walker.
Best player available, if you will.
Maybe. Not by my account, but again, I understand. Jalon Walker is a guy that's not always available here when we do these mock drafts, so we haven't talked about him with the Bears. I wouldn't hate that because my next edge would be James Pierce, but trying to do some predicting here. I feel like Pierce might fall a little bit. I think Mike Green teams might talk themselves into, trying to do a little predicting and see where it lands. The offensive line, is that completely off the table here? Early in the process, it was Kelvin Banks, but then they go into free agency and they filled every spot. If they got a tackle, there's not even a path to the field for Kelvin Banks or a starting tackle here, just because unless they compete with Braxton Jones, or it might be replace Braxton Jones after a year. But I think they've done enough work there that they probably don't go offensive line here. Yeah,
probably not. There's also, right guard, I think, could be a spot that somebody could start, but it would involve obviously kicking somebody in to guard. And then right guard year 1 and kicking out the left tackle year 2 is not the easiest or most natural, career pathway. It's been done, I think, but it's not. You wouldn't want to go that way, I think.
And in the past, I wanted to give the Bears a corner, and maybe this is the place. Now, hear me out. Jalen Johnson, Kyler Gordon, both of those guys. Kyler Gordon just signed his new contract this weekend. He'll play inside mostly. It's Tyreek Stevenson on the outside. I know he's been a pretty good starter. He's been an okay starter for his 2 years, but he had the Hail Mary thing, and I don't think they're completely soured on him. But if Will Johnson or Jahdae Barron is there and you love those guys, what a trio at corner, especially when you're talking about slowing down the Lions, slowing down the Packers and all the plethora of receivers that they have, slowing down the Vikings and maybe the best group of receivers in the NFL. I think I might go corner here for the Bears.
Oh, man.
You know what, Sam? I'm bringing Will Johnson hype back. I'm bringing Will Johnson back. I think he's going to go have a good workout here today. I'm going Will Johnson here for the Bears. Bears aren't drafted. I don't care what you say. I don't care what you say. Everybody in the chat, I hear you. The Bears aren't drafting a cornerback. But I am. I was going to reconsider. I'm doing it, though. Will Johnson to the Bears. I don't care. Already, I'll take the heat. You never have enough corners. You never do. You never do. Will Johnson. He's still a top 10 player. That's what he is. Of course they need a corner.
I mean, look, I think they need a starting corner. Like, I think Tyreek Stevenson is done as a starter the way they soured on him late in the season. I don't understand why they don't just give that job to Terrell Smith and see whether he can handle it. But I think that I think that they believe they're in the market for another starting corner.
You and your Terrell Smith priors. Do you mind doing a little top 10?
Not just priors. I mean, I would imagine he has a better PFF grade than Tyreek Stevenson in his NFL career.
Probably. But do you mind doing a little recap of the top 10?
I'm now recapping your top 10.
Yeah.
Are you doing any part of your own mock draft?
All right. You do the ad reads and I'll do this. You could tell everybody about our special new sponsor later in the show.
I don't have it open. Number one, Tennessee Titans, Cam Ward, the chalk pick. Basically, we've got a chalk mock draft here. Number two, the Browns select Travis Hunter, the wide receiver / cornerback from Colorado. Number three, the Giants picked Abdul Carter, edge rusher from Penn State. Number four, the New England Patriots select Will Campbell, offensive tackle from LSU. 5, the Jags grab Mason Graham, defensive tackle from Michigan. Number 6, the Raiders got Ashton Jeanty, running back from Boise State. Number 7, the Jets got Armand Membou, the tackle from Missouri. Number 8, the Carolina Panthers got Mike Green, the edge from Marshall. Number 9, the New Orleans Saints got a new quarterback, Shedeur Sanders from Colorado. Number 10, the Chicago Bears got Will Johnson, the cornerback from Michigan.
The good news is I got a pretty good feel, I think, for where these next few picks are going to go. So part of it's just my own comfort level. Go with Will Johnson, throw a little curveball, and then I think I know where 11, 14 through 14 might be going. We're going to tell you right now, this is the surefire way to wake up feeling fresh with drinks. After drinks with friends, it's pre-alcohol. So ZBiotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's a buildup of this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for rough days after drinking. So pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. So just remember to make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night, drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. We put this to the test at the scouting combine, had our friend in town. He used it, felt great. Dealt with all those late nights at the scouting combine in Indianapolis and made it through the next day extremely well. Early meetings, and it helped quite a bit. So spring is here, which means more opportunities to celebrate warmer weather before drinks on the patio, that tropical vacation, or your best friend's wedding. Don't forget your ZBiotics pre-alcohol. Drink one before drinking and wake up feeling great the next day. So go to zbiotics.com/checkthemic to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use Check the Mic at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with 100% money-back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money. No questions asked. Remember, head to zbiotics.com/checkthemic. Use code checkthemic at checkout for 15% off. All right, Sam, we're up at pick 11 here for the San Francisco 49ers. Massive need at edge. I thought Michael Williams might be a really nice fit as that base edge type opposite Nick Bosa, but I kind of like Jalon Walker here now. that he's available. Hasn't been available in other mock drafts. I like the Jalon Walker, Georgia edge rush fit here for the San Francisco 49ers.
I would like that a lot. I think, Jalon Walker, again, it's this weird prospect who's been effectively a hybrid player for them. But he's listed as a linebacker, isn't he? In this,
he's listed as a linebacker. Yeah,
I think there's no reason he can't be a full-time edge rusher. I mean, he's 6'2", 240 something. There are edge rushers, elite edge rushers in the NFL who have played at that size without being a liability in the run game. His tape to me says that can be him. I don't see any reason why he can't be a high-end edge rusher.
So there we go. Jalon Walker. Look, Niners, they need pass rush help. They need defensive line help. They need to replenish up front. I think edge is very much in play there. I thought early in the offseason, Kelvin Banks was a really nice fit for them. I just think they've got too many other positions to fill where the value is still really good there. So I like Jalon Walker there. Puts the Cowboys up at pick 12. Now, this is where they've had a lot of different discussion in various places. The Matthew Golden pick, which is a little bit less on the PFF mock draft simulator here because the PFF board's a little bit lower on Golden, but some people love Golden as wide receiver 1 in non-Travis Hunter world. I don't. Marion Hampton, a lot of people giving them the running back there, right? Could they go with the next best edge rusher here? So I guess what I'm trying to do here is say, what would I like to do versus what could they do? So I could play the prediction game. So the prediction game might say Matthew Golden. What I would do is probably Tetairoa and McMillan. What do you think I should do here, Sam? Should I go with what GM Steve would do, or the prediction where I think there's enough groundswell that Matthew Golden is wide receiver 1 and that he would be the guy off the board here for them?
So even though they're very different players, I kind of feel like they have a very similar usage pattern for this team. Like, they're given you've got CeeDee Lamb already in place, you're effectively slotting either McMillan or Golden into exactly the same role within that offense, even though they're going to get their wins in very different ways.
So this is where, when we do our viewer mock draft, I would be really interested in what this would look like, because the 4 options I would probably put up there for the viewers to select would be Tetairoa, McMillan, Matthew Golden, the 2 receivers, Marion Hampton at running back, and say Mykel Williams at edge. And I would be really interested to see what the chat came up with those 4 players. Looking forward to the viewer mock. Takes a lot of pressure off. I don't have to make the tough decision. So I'm going to go with what I would do, though. I would go Tetairoa and McMillan here. I think his fit next to CeeDee Lamb would be outstanding. And look, that's for all the questions about McMillan's game. The answers to me are when I say, hey, I'd like him with the Jags with Brian Thomas Jr. I'd like him with the Cowboys with CeeDee Lamb. To your point, like, the more complimentary player, but I think a really high-end T. Higgins-like complimentary player, because we've had that discussion before. So I think the Cowboys, they seem to draft better, Sam. I say this every year, when they draft the best player, the theoretical best player on the board, and they don't necessarily draft for need. I think in this particular situation, it matches. I think they both converge at the right point. Best player in need, Tetairoa and McMillan at 12 for the Cowboys here.
All right.
We got McMillan and CeeDee Lamb for Dak Prescott. I've seen some Tyler Warren buzz at tight end for the Cowboys as well. I think you were early on that in one of our mocks, weren't you?
Tyler Warren, I think Cowboys? It's definitely a spot where he could land. Again, it's like, are the players they have in place keeping you from drafting somebody that you think is that good? If you believe Tyler Warren is, not Brock Bauer special, but like conventional top tight end in the draft special, I don't think that the tight ends or the investment that they've spent in Jake Ferguson and Lou Schoonmaker, I don't think those guys are keeping you from drafting him at that spot.
All right, puts the Miami Dolphins up at 13. Every year, there are certain picks that maybe I feel like I haven't talked a lot about the Dolphins during this. Despite us being so long-winded and having 3-hour mock drafts, we haven't dove in deep with the Dolphins. It's kind of like, Kelvin Banks makes a lot of sense. is there any reason with Teron Armstead retiring?
Right.
Is there any reason to believe that they might go somewhere else? Kelvin Banks could step in, play left tackle. Would they believe that last year's second rounder Patrick Paul should play left tackle, and there's a different path to take? Because I'll just throw this out there. Corner is intriguing to me. By the way, of course, Josh Simmons could be the pick here too. I wouldn't go that route over Banks.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, we haven't talked about it that much because we've always been basically saying it's another one of those spots where Kelvin Banks to this team always makes sense. So let's throw it in there. Yeah, look, if you are convinced that this team believes Patrick Paul was drafted for a reason, they've seen enough from him in practice, he is the future at left tackle, and left tackle is fine. Even if that's your description, you're still looking at this offensive line and saying left guard needs a starter immediately. Right tackle could be upgraded upon extremely easily because Austin Jackson has basically never been good since he was drafted. We're set at 3 out of 5 positions. So I think you're still in the offensive line market, and maybe even with the same player still, that Kelvin Banks could come in and play left guard day one or right tackle day one. I think even if you're convinced the left tackle is fine and set, I think you are still in the market for offensive line at this spot, and potentially even with the same players. So definitely, because left tackle is still the most valuable position on the offensive line, you're less inclined to draft offensive line if you believe left tackle is set. But, I still think it's one of your biggest acute needs. Maybe, the percentages that you would draft a corner tick up slightly, but I would still say offensive line is where you're looking.
Yeah, here's the thing. If the Dolphins, if you knew you can get serviceable play from Patrick Paul, I am intrigued by the interior defensive linemen available. Walter Nolen, Kenneth Grant. I'm intrigued by that for the Dolphins, and I'm intrigued by Jahdae Barron at corner. If I knew, and I don't know how they feel about him. I know how I feel about him, and it's like, I'm not there yet, right? I'm not feeling great about Patrick Paul. Hey, you're locked in. At the same time, when you spend a second rounder on him, pick 55 last year, played a little over 300 snaps, had a 44 PFF grade, but you put a second round pick for Patrick Paul. So there's a chance the Dolphins are like, no, we're fine. Now Banks could play guard or tackle, or there's multiple solutions here with Kelvin Banks. So that's where I'm going to go. But I just want to say I'm intrigued by the players you put up on the screen there. Jahdae Barron, Walter Nolen, Kenneth Grant. I am very intrigued by the fit there for Miami and think they could go that route. But I really believe the Teron Armstead retirement, whether they knew it was coming or not, just kind of added another hole, another thing that they needed to consider. And Kelvin Banks he made sense before the retirement. He makes sense even more after the retirement. So I'll take Kelvin Banks here.
Yeah, and to be fair to Patrick Paul, he was drafted in the second round as a kind of developmental offensive tackle. Again, presumably with at least an eye to this idea of Teron Armstead's getting long on the tooth. He's very oft injured these days anyway. Like, it's a sensible, long-term kind of future planning thing. But the point being, he was always going to be a bit of a developmental offensive tackle. So the fact that he had a PFF grade of 45 on 300 snaps year one, I wouldn't write him off because of that. Obviously those were not great first impressions, but you would expect him to struggle right out of the gate given the sort of developmental arc that he was supposed to be on.
And I agree. And I just think having Kelvin Banks there, could he play guard year one? Patrick Paul maybe wins the left tackle spot. You mentioned about Austin Jackson. It's not like they're tied to him a ton for the long term. Maybe eventually Paul moves to right tackle, Banks moves to left tackle. You have three tackles competing for 2 tackle spots plus a guard spot. So I think it makes a lot of sense from a team building standpoint, even though I'm very intrigued by those other positions. So let's click the button. Kelvin Banks to the Dolphins here at 13. Drake Holiday asking if he wonders if the Dolphins would actually make this pick when it comes down to it. That's what I'm considering, right? I'm thinking they might say, hey, look, we knew Patrick Paul's our left tackle. We have Liam Eichenberg at left guard. We're going with that. We got to take these other top players. It could be in the works here. All right, Colts at 14. Yeah. Go ahead.
You might not replace him in round one, but Eichenberg needs to be replaced.
Yeah, I don't think they were bringing him back necessarily to be the long-term starter, which is why I'm leaning Banks here. All right, let's go. Colts at 14. Chalk pick is Tyler Warren. Any discussion elsewhere? If they hadn't made the offseason secondary investments, the Jahdae Barron pick, I mean, Jahdae Barron is starting to look like really good value for all these teams in the teens here.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can argue Jahdae Barron is a top 10 player in this draft. So he's like the Brian Branch thing, though, for slightly different reasons. And I would assume not quite as big a fall. I think he's going to end up coming out of this draft wherever he's drafted as, when we're doing round 1, round 2 recaps, we're going to be saying where almost regardless of where he's drafted, one of the best value picks in this entire draft has been Jahdae Barron, cornerback from Texas, going to, Team X.
So I'm probably going to lean Warren here. Barron, where would he fit in here? They have Kenny Moore playing in the slot. Travarius Ward comes in on a big contract. They have 2 long corners in Juju Brents and Jalen Jones, probably competing on the outside and the other opposite Travarius Ward. But are they both the old scheme? Are they all the old Gus Bradley, big long corners? Is Jahdae Barron? I think Barron's better than Juju Brents or Jalen Jones, but is that enough to maybe pass up a Tyler Warren at tight end? I don't know if that's the case. Because Brents was a developmental corner with incredible traits. Jalen Jones, big long corner, who's played all right. Like, I don't think it's a massive need. I'm just interested in Barron there. And then they just spent a ton of money on Cameron Bynum at safety. So are the safeties, guys like Malachi Starks. The sleeper, again, in this 10 to 15, 10 to 20 range for me is Jihaad Campbell, the linebacker out of Alabama. You can argue against linebacker value, but I think if you've got the clear 3-down backer who some people might like as a pass rusher a little bit, depending on how much you blitz, I think Campbell is sneakily in the mix for the Colts here, for the Falcons, for the Cardinals, for the Bengals, like all these teams in this range. Teams that need maybe D-line help and could be looking at Campbell. So those are the other guys that I would consider.
Yeah, they're a team though where like not only is it like, well, they could use these guys at different spots. Their need at tight end is so acute that they almost have to draft one of the guys at the top of this draft, Tyler Warren or Colson Loveland. Is there any argument you would entertain for Colson Loveland being the tight end as over Tyler Warren?
I want to go back to the film on that. My first impression was no. I do think Warren's the better all-around option. My souring on Warren is just that I don't think he's an elite. Like, it wouldn't feel great taking him in the top 10, not only just generally among tight ends, but in this draft class too, where I think there's just some better, more valuable positions and players that should be going there. Not even comparing him to Brock Bowers, just saying, I think if him and Loveland feel like more back end of the first round prospects than top half of the first round prospects to me. That's all. But I understand it. Warren, I think, has better run blocking value, despite the conclusion that our friend Nate Tice came to. I think Warren being the best player on the field for Penn State means something. The way that they fed him means something. I don't think he's terribly fast athletic, but he's tight end athletic, right? He can get open, and I think he's got just a physicality to him. And the physicality of Tyler Warren, I think, gives me the edge for him over Loveland. And that really has my ears perked, eyes open, in Indianapolis, where you're running the ball with Jonathan Taylor, the offensive line with Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones running the ball. Yeah, Sam, I don't know what I said, but, looking forward to it.
As anybody else.
Tyler Warren, baby. All right.
44. Is that retired? Does he have to talk it back out of retirement from Dallas Clark?
By the way, I saw Nate's Dallas Clark comp. I'm not feeling that. I think you told me, hey, go ahead. I know what you're going to say. Go ahead.
I've seen a few people comp him to Dallas Clark. I mean, I think a large part of it has to be because it's a white tight end wearing number 44 in vaguely Colts-shaped colors.
I thought you were going to bring up weren't they like the same weight or something? But I don't think that's...
No, allegedly they were, though. I have no idea how.
I don't think so. I mean, Dallas, if they were, let's say they were both 253 or whatever the listed weight was, 253 at tight end now, Tyler Warren looks like the Mark Bavaro, Kyle Brady looking tight end who was like 275, 280 back in the day. Whereas Dallas Clark was like an H-back size at his time, right? So you can't even if they're the same listed weight, Tyler Warren is like a big 3-down run blocking tight end, physical tight end these days, not whatever Dallas Clark was at the time, which was a big slot basically for the way the Colts used him.
I mean, Dallas Clark is listed at 6'3", 252. And look, it's not fair to him now because he's 45 years old, but like I've seen him at those tight end things where he looks tiny compared with these current monstrous behemoth tight ends. So I don't know if he ever weighed 252. I would be surprised based off what he looked like playing and the size he is right now, but that's what he was listed at.
Last thing, just to reiterate my point, Drake, you always have good points in the chat here. He says Pats and Chiefs dynasties both prove tight end can be pretty valuable. I would never argue with that. I completely agree with that. If I knew I was getting a top 5 tight end, I would take that guy in the top 5. I think that guy would be fine in the top 5 if you knew you were getting that. But there's always uncertainty, and there's only a handful of guys who feel like are game changers at tight end in the league at any given time. I don't know if Warren's going to get there. I think there's more uncertainty that he's going to get there than, say, Brock Bowers or others in the past. That's all.
I also feel like tight end feels like it has more unexplainable busts than any other position. Like these guys that were surefire first round, all around tight end prospects, Brandon Pettigrew, OJ Howard, like these guys that everyone thought was like, everybody was certain that guy was going to be amazing, and they were just never good. I don't know. There's something about the position that seems to be the bust potential seems to scare me more than other positions.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of data too. Even like the TJ Hawkinsons and David Njoku's and Evan Ingrams of the world, they were all first-round tight ends who didn't do their best work until year 4 or 5. That's when they started to figure things out. So you're paying for someone else's production, basically. That's the problem at tight end. All right, Falcons at 15. I think it's defense. I think it's defensive line. As I've said before, are they sneaky linebacker landing spot for Jihaad Campbell? You've brought up corner for them a bit, and I see Barron there. I really think they're going to go front 7, though. Re-sign Mike Hughes opposite AJ Terrell. I think Hughes for multiple years, so I don't think they're going to go corner. Even though Barron could play nickel too. Oh, man, that would be interesting. That'd be really interesting. They've got one of the worst pass rushes, though.
Yeah, still.
Where would they go? Could they be one of the Shemar? Are they one of the first Shemar Stewart teams that would consider the upside of Shemar Stewart? Because we're weighing that against, let's remember the descriptions. Mykel Williams, to me, is the high floor run defender type who could develop as a pass rusher. Shemar Stewart's the theoretical high upside pass rusher. James Pierce is the guy. We just don't know where the league's going to land on him. And I think in my mock, I probably want him going late first to account for that. Donovan Ezeirauku is a guy that we both had higher than all those other guys, and maybe he should be the play at 15 for the Falcons, now that I'm thinking about it. And Walter Nolen should be okay. All right. Here's where I'm down to. Ezeirauku or Walter Nolen here for the Falcons. And whichever one they don't take is probably going to the Bengals at 17. Just saying.
I mean, I think if you're looking at so a big part of their problem is that they've got a ton of young guys that we don't know a lot about because they kind of spammed the position last year after drafting Michael Penix Jr. at the top of the draft. I think there's more kind of incumbent investment on the interior than there is on the edge, right? So the edge, you've got Arnold Ebiketie, who hasn't become a great player and is sort of reaching the end of that initial contract. You got Braylon Trice, who we literally didn't see last year. Leonard Floyd, who they brought in as a short-term stopgap. I think somebody could come in and start immediately on the edge. The interior, you've got David Onyemata, who's probably the best player on that defensive line. Morgan Fox, Rook Orororo, who they drafted a year ago. You've still got Brandon Dorless, who they also drafted a year ago. There's more on the inside than there is on the edge. So Walter Nolen might be the best player available to them, but the need is more acute for the edge rushers.
Your guy Kenneth Grant could be in the mix there as well.
Yeah.
But I agree. The edge rush question. Let's go Ezeirauku. I'm gonna trust my board here and go Donovan Ezeirauku. I'm trying to predict Shemar Stewart for people. Even if I wouldn't necessarily, I would rather take Ezeirauku over Shemar Stewart, but I'm trying to predict where could he go, right? Where would be a good spot for Shemar Stewart? It might be this next pick with the Cardinals. I've linked him to the Cardinals a few times, who just got Josh Sweat, who is a similar comp to Shemar Stewart. Now, Sweat went in the 4th round, but similar length and theoretical upside that came good after a few years. So Arizona's up now. I still think defensive line's a massive need. I'm intrigued by Campbell here, even though I'd love for Campbell to go to the chalk Bucs pick at 19. Could the Cardinals go Barron here? That's probably going to stop his slide.
They need
right?
impact playmakers at all 3 levels still. Like they've got some bodies now at all 3 levels, but Jahdae Barron is the best secondary player available. Jihaad Campbell is the best linebacker available. Walter Nolen is the best defensive lineman available. Arguably, any of those players would, and Malachi Starks, if you want to say it's just pure safety, any of those guys would walk in and start on this team.
Just defensive playmakers anywhere for Arizona. They brought in Dalvin Tomlinson, Josh Sweat, brought back Baron Browning. So they definitely have more bodies, but could still use more impact. The Tomlinson might handle the 320, 330 plus pounder that maybe they don't need a Kenneth Grant and be redundant there. It doesn't matter. The Lions had DJ Reader and Alim McNeil. It's okay to have similar body types. At corner, though, Sean Murphy Bunting, Starling Thomas the 5th, 2 draft picks last year, Max Melton and Elijah Jones. They've got bodies, to your point, but not necessarily impact players.
Dude, PFF's board has got a real shakeup. They got
they shook it up. Yeah.
They've got Omar Norman Lott above Derek Harmon by 15 picks or whatever that is.
Yeah. Norman Lott was like the round 2 to 3 sleeper for me. I think he's got some long-term injury. He went from sleeper to they've got him in the top 32.
Right.
I wouldn't do that. that.
And where is, he's like a 3rd round pick on the consensus board, I think.
Yeah. They also,
81.
They need to import the public board for these mocks just because it's just more realistic. Right. It's just more realistic. Anyway, I'm going to go Barron here for Arizona. Ooh. I'm going to go Jahdae Barron. I really wanted... So from my perspective, I really want a little bit more defensive line help. But I think if Will Johnson or Jahdae Barron is there, for me, I'd be happy with that pick. I would be really happy with that pick for the Cardinals. That puts the Bengals up on the clock at pick 17. Same defensive players. Walter Nolen, Derek Harmon. Edge rusher. Would they be a Shemar Stewart landing spot?
Okay, so let's assume they still have Trey Hendrickson for the moment, albeit, that might be a trade away candidate. Either way, they need defensive line help. Who would be, so we're now in the world where all these edge rushers are wildly different players. Like, which is the sort of style of edge rusher you would want to put on that team?
In my head, if Ezeirauku was there, I would want him, right? You would want a closer to a sure thing, because I know that we always keep saying, like, you can't afford to miss, right? If Miles Murphy doesn't come good in year 3, that ends up becoming a pretty big miss for them. And if you have a Shemar Stewart who might take 2 or 3 years to figure it out, I don't think they can afford that. So the closest thing to a sure thing. Now, defensive tackle is interesting because they brought back BJ Hill, they brought in TJ Slayton. And last year, they drafted Chris Jenkins and McKinley Jackson. So internally, they could say, we're not fine there, but we've invested there. And there might not be a great path to the field for Walter Nolen or Derek Harmon, which means it probably has to be edge, where you're going to rotate. And it's like, all right, Trey Hendrickson plus insurance for Hendrickson, then Miles Murphy, Joseph Asai, get one more body in there and hope that they develop.
Except the missing skill set of all those defensive tackles, TJ Slayton, Chris Jenkins, BJ Hill, McKinley Jackson, even none of those guys are
rusher.
rush the passer, interior, penetrating, third down defensive tackles. Whereas that's exactly what you're getting from Walter Nolen, from Derek Harmon, from the great Omar Norman Lott 27 on the PFF big board. Like that's the trait from those guys.
I get it. I completely get it, which is why we put Nolen there before. I'm trying to get into their, headspace a little bit. And would they say that they're good there? And would they say, okay, well, the hole now is actually at safety and Malachi Starks is available there. The other one, and I don't know what happens with this, but Jermaine Pratt asking for a trade. In my brain, I've already traded him to Indianapolis to be right. Like that's already happened in my head. Like I've already traded him to go be with Lou Anarumo in Indianapolis. And if that's the case, that's why I've kept bringing up Jihaad Campbell as an option for the Bengals here, where maybe Pratt is out and you bring in Campbell to pair with Logan Wilson at linebacker in this new scheme. Think they're going to blitz a little bit more. Do you handle some of that pass rush with a Campbell? I think he's in play maybe more than we've discussed in the past. That's why I keep bringing his name up, because I think a lot of the teams that have defensive line need, I'm not saying they're solving it with Campbell, but they also have a three-down linebacker need. And I don't know how often teams might talk themselves into him also as a pass rush threat on third down.
The other kind of specter for the Bengals is, I mean, we've been assuming, okay, they've thrown all the money now at T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow. They brought back Mike Gesicki, which I thought that was kind of underrated, good move for them. The offensive line wasn't good last year and had some turnover. Like, are they still in the offense market with one of these offensive linemen that could come in and start day one?
Yes, they are. But I think they're going to think about the offensive line, the potential. Now, look, they've tried the second round offensive lineman previously and it didn't work. But last year they went Mims in the first round. I think coming off that defensive season, even though we've made the point, the defense could be top 15 next year with the same talent, right? It's not devoid of talent. Could be top 15 next year with the same talent. But I do believe that they probably want to go that route on defense. So Michael Williams, too, is another guy that isn't always here when we draft. So some intriguing defensive options here. I think I'm still probably going to land on the defensive line with Nolen, Michael Williams, Shemar Stewart discussion. I just don't know who makes that Shemar Stewart play. Maybe it's the Seahawks at 18. Maybe it's John Schneider. Let's go Walter. Oh, I wanted to go edge. Let's go Walter Nolen still. Back to the chalk pick that we keep going back to.
Even though they've got on the consensus board.
Nolan's, I think he's close to 32. He is
26.
26, okay. That's not crazy. A little behind Kenneth Grant and Malachi Starks. Jihaad Campbell's at 19. Shemar Stewart's at 16. I as always, I'm fascinated to know where Shemar Stewart goes. I think 10 years ago, he might go top 10. I think with an NFL that's more analytics driven, I think he goes lower, but still probably top 20. That would be my prediction with Stewart, right? Maybe it's the Seahawks here at 18. Because I'm gonna stick with they're not gonna draft a guard. I know you wanted to give him a guard. You're all in on them drafting a guard. They're a sneaky Jihaad Campbell spot. With with Ernest Jones back. Do they want another 3-down linebacker? I think linebacker in Mike McDonald's system is valued pretty highly. They got last year's late rounder Tyrese Knight, who played all right as a rookie, but they brought back Ernest Jones, maybe Jihaad Campbell for Seattle. I just don't think they go guard. I think they stick to their guns here, Sam.
Man, I don't know how they could come out of this first round, particularly if the draft fell this way. I don't know how you could come out of this first round without taking,
because they're not top. I think it's easy, right? I mean, look, I think Jackson Powers Johnson, who went in the second round last year, was a better prospect than any of those guards. I think he's a better prospect than Gray Zabel. I think he's a better prospect than Tyler Booker. And he still went in the 40s or whatever, and the Raiders got him in the second. That's where this study is going. That's where this is going, right? We have 2 2s And that's where the board is going to fall. Like one of those guys is going to be available. We'll take a guard with one of those 2 second-rounders.
Right, but the takeaway from last year is that Seattle should have taken him in the first round.
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
No, because you're talking about a full team-building effort. They still made the right move taking Byron Murphy II. Byron Murphy is going to be an impact player for them. Thought he was a little up and down as a rookie. He's going to be an impact player. They drafted the best player at that spot. They made the right move drafting Byron Murphy II, assuming he'll play a little bit better and live up to that potential next year. That's the right move. It's the right move rather than just forcing a guard. Even though JPJ, I think, played well enough that you would have said, oh, that's justifiable at late, whatever they picked last year. Similar spot, 17, 18, 16, whatever it was. Was it 16? They made the right move.
I don't know.
I think they're gonna stick with it.
I mean, they might stick with it. That's not the same thing. I look, this is a team that's for 2 straight years now had a desperate, acute need in the interior of the offensive line. The need is now, if anything, even stronger because they downgraded the quarterback in terms of how he handles that pressure. Like Geno Smith, for all of his faults, and I'm not saying he's a perfect quarterback, like Geno Smith tended to melt down in the red zone, which is a fairly critical flaw for a quarterback. Geno Smith made that offensive line look a lot better than it was. And the very moment he went out of the lineup, you saw just how bad that offensive line was. It's the same unit, and you just put Sam Darnold behind it. And the last thing we saw from him was complete and total collapse in the face of pressure. So if the plan is, well, we just don't draft interior offensive linemen in the first round for like as a philosophical belief system, okay. But then, like, who's starting?
I already answered. I told you they could take 2 Georgia players in round 2. They can get Tate Ratledge and Jared Wilson in round 2, and I'd be fine with that, right? This isn't the only pick that you have.
No, but it's the first round pick where the best players go, and this was the same excuse they did a year ago. We're not going to draft Jackson Powers Johnson in the first round because we'll be able to come back later on and grab another starter. And after the draft, and this is to an extent revisionist history, because after the draft they got Christian Haynes, and you're like, well, we really liked him as a prospect. That's good process. Well done. We were wrong. You were right, John Schneider. On the other hand, Christian Haynes didn't look good year 1. Jackson Powers Johnson did, and there's probably a reason that one of them went at the top of the draft and the other one didn't. Like that's the risk when you don't draft these guys at the top of the draft and you come back later on. Like there's a reason the first round draft picks is where you invest for the need.
I just think the way they didn't have a second rounder last year, so it may have even been riskier last year. And I liked Haynes as a 3rd rounder, and I think he actually has a lot of potential in the new system. To be honest, he struggled with power last year. He's got to be better in pass protection, but I think he's a good fit for the new system. I think he actually has a chance to start at guard. I'm not sitting there banking on it, but the way the board is, there's nobody I love on the interior offensive line for Seattle at 18. Now, I'll probably take Gray Zabel like 5 picks later, but beside the point, I don't think there's a slam dunk. It's not like there's a clear as day. I think JPJ was a fantastic prospect, and even then we were saying, do we really want to take him at 16? Do we really want to take him this high? I think there's value to get in the second round.
But it's a different draft. This is not the loaded. Like I would have no problem whatsoever drafting Gray Zabel and plugging him in to start day 1 if I'm the Seahawks at 18.
No, I understand. I get it. I'm just going to take my chance that Zabel's closer to Georgia's guys. I don't know that he's better than Tate Ratledge from Georgia. You know what I'm saying? I don't feel that confident that I have to take Gray Zabel at 18. So I'm going to take a player I like somewhere else. I really might go Jihaad Campbell here for Seattle. And this is partly I like Campbell. It screws up my Bucs pick at 19, but that's fine. I really think they might go this way. I really think McDonald's going to value linebackers that highly. The other sneaky position for them is corner. And Chavon Ravel's fallen a little bit on consensus board. He's got the injury and everything. I don't know how much they love Reek Woolen. And then they have a spot next to Reek Woolen if you have Devin Witherspoon playing in the slot. You also have a Malachi Starks who has that flexibility. Their whole secondary is these cornerback safety hybrids. Could throw another into the mix with Malachi Starks. I think the secondary is another potential option here.
You've said that a few times. Why do you think they don't love Reek Woolen?
The Seattle radio rumbling. Every time I'm on Seattle radio, that seems to come up. So I'm more echoing what's been said.
Okay.
And they would have to pay. They'd probably have to pay him a lot in a year. And you might not want to do that. It gives you some flexibility if you have someone else. So I will fix their offensive line in the second round. I promise. Listen, Seahawks fans, bear with me at pick 18 here. I will fix your offensive line in round 2 with my 2-2s. Okay? I'll take care of it. I just want to throw Matthew Golden's name out there as well, too, as if we're talking about you have JSN, you have Cooper Kupp. If Golden was available here as your, I guess, vertical threat because he ran a 4.29, is he a good third wide? I feel pretty good about him as a wide receiver 3 with JSN, Cooper Kupp, and then MVS, Valdez-Scantling, as your take the top off the defense guy.
It feels like a lot of deployment redundancy in that trio.
I think Golden could play outside, but yeah, you already have double slots and or tight split guys in JSN and Cooper Kupp, but that's what this offense runs anyway. So
right, like that might be 3 Z wide receivers, which there's a way of making that work, but still,
I'm more getting into the headspace of the dude has a 4.29 next to his name, and that speed next to possession types JSN and Cooper Kupp could be intriguing. Let's go. I'm going Jihaad Campbell here, Sam, for the Seattle Seahawks. Mike McDonald has Campbell and Ernest Jones. He's shown that he values linebackers, and I think this is a legitimate play here. Bucs at 19. So now I think I'm going to go back either edge or safety here with Malachi Starks. I don't know where Starks' value is going to be. I could almost talk myself into him for a bunch of these teams. So for me, the Bucs, they brought Hassan Reddick in for 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're talking about Shemar Stewart as the developmental guy and Michael Williams. So when we're talking about diversifying your edge portfolio, you have Chris Braswell, who's like your high floor, fundamentally sound, but not a dynamic pass rusher. Michael Williams might be kind of redundant to that type, but Shemar Stewart brings you the crazy theoretical upside while you have Hassan Reddick and Yaya Diaby and Chris Braswell and Anthony Nelson. You got some depth there to let Shemar Stewart develop. Like, this could be a good landing spot for the developmental Shemar Stewart play.
He would be an interesting day one impact player anyway, even if you just said your special skill right now is an elite bull rush, right? Like, we'll work on other things, but right now your job is to just take the offensive tackle and run through him. That would work here. Like, you could have him as a rotation with Yaya Diaby, Hassan Reddick, and the human bull rush that is Shemar Stewart, and just say that works.
Isn't that intriguing? And as there's that the planet theory stuff. If you had Vita Vea and Shemar Stewart on the same defensive line, right? Like, you got to have that conversation. As much as I don't want to be the guy picking Shemar Stewart, just trying to put myself into the headspace here. Imagine what the high end plays look like when Vita and Shemar both play to their potential on a given play.
I mean, I do like the idea of, look, the less you need from Stewart right away, the better, right? Like, I hate, so part of the problem with his conversation is like trying to imagine what he becomes, right? Once, like, what is the most likely end result of whatever development arc he goes on within the NFL? How good is that player going to be? But if you're looking at it and saying, well, if all we get out of him is kind of what we see right now, which is this incredibly potent bull rush who has severe limitations doing other things, that's still a potential impact player in this specific defense, because you already have, Yaya Diaby, you've already got Hassan Reddick bringing a sort of designated speed threat on the other side. You've got some interior rushers like Shemar Stewart. If all he brings to the table is that, it makes a useful, positive contribution for this specific group.
I kind of like it. I mean, I've seen the chat bring up James Pierce. I brought up Mykel Williams. I think just another D-line body here could be awesome for Tampa Bay. Malachi Starks and Antoine Winfield Jr. and some of the flexibility that Starks has with Tyke Smith. I mean, you add a lot of flexibility to the secondary there potentially. But I'm going to go Shemar Stewart. I'm trying to find a spot for Shemar Stewart. I'm trying to predict that he goes in the top 20. I'm not saying I want to do this necessarily. I wouldn't be the guy to take him. And where'd PFF drop him to? 33?
Below Scouting. Scorton.
We landed at Scorton. And still ahead of Derek Harmon. I don't know what the Derek Harmon hate. I don't know where that came from.
They hate Derek Harmon. They dropped him like 20 spots.
Him below Tyleik Williams and Landon Jackson. Man, Trevor. What's going on, Trevor? Chavon Ravel's a first rounder, man. Get him in the first round. I might take him with Pittsburgh. At 21. We need more Ravel. Give me Shemar Stewart. Let's just do it. Let's just have some fun. It's a thought exercise. It's a thought exercise. Don't forget.
It's a thought exercise.
Broncos at 20, and then we almost get to our big influencer time here, Sam. It's coming up. Get ready.
Yes.
After pick 20. Broncos. Do I go running back? Does Steve put another running back in the first round here? Do I go Marion Hampton? Do we go receiver here for the Broncos? Do we go more defensive line depth? I did an early Broncos mock draft where I gave them Mykel Williams. And the initial reaction, they had all the sacks last year, but man, the depth on that defensive line with Mykel Williams, a little Nick Bonito insurance if he doesn't, want to re-sign. I think they'll lock up Bonito after last year, but D-line depth, you could always use more, right?
You can always use more.
What's the chat think? Some people are begging for defensive line. People are saying no first-round running backs. We got a Scattaboo call. Scattaboo, baby.
First-round Scattaboo.
Second-round Scattaboo for the Broncos. Go second-round Scattaboo, first-round D-line, right?
This, I think, is also, wide receiver, I think, makes a lot of sense. I wouldn't reach for running back in this spot, but sure. Tight end is still on the table, I think, even with Evan Engram being signed. Like this Colson Loveland, if you think he's a guy that's worth 20 overall.
Yeah, I kind of took him out of my mind because I don't want him that high, I think, compared to some of these other players, but I'm not saying it's not possible. I also think that they probably went Ingram, so they didn't have to go tight end here.
Yeah, I also kind of love Kenneth Grant at this spot.
Oh man, yeah. But I like Grant to Pittsburgh. That's the thing.
That is a shame, yeah.
I keep stealing the players that I want to. I'm ruining my own mock draft when I do that because they got Grant slotted in to Pittsburgh there.
Who would the wide receiver be if you were picking one?
I would go Burden. Abuka is interesting here. There's some. I might go Abuka here. I know I ranked him lower. Where did I rank him? A little bit lower than Burden. And then I had Higgins higher, but I don't know if I would go Higgins here. I'd probably go Luther Burden the third. Now, would they go Matthew Golden? They've got Mims and his deep speed. You got Sutton, Vele, and Troy Franklin's got the deep speed. Like, is that too redundant with Golden? If that's what people think Golden is.
What is this?
They dropped Noel that far. They kept Restrepo up high.
Dude, we got some bones of contention with this.
Let's get Trevor on the show. Explain yourself. By the way, I'm making a slight assumption that only Trevor's doing the board here. I don't know that that's the case. Like there's historically when we were at PFF, whoever was in charge of the draft was in charge of the board up to a certain point, and then they started to grab other opinions and then kind of merge them together. So I'm not sure what their exact process is. I don't want to put that on.
It doesn't matter. As former faces of PFF, you are responsible as the face for whatever comes out under the PFF banner. So regardless of how much input Trevor has actually had in the big board, it is Trevor's responsibility that he bears. It is his burden to shoulder.
So we blame Trevor. We can get him on the show. We can get him on here to explain himself. I'm sure he has plenty of time given the multiple shows that he's running. Yeah, Steve Smith Sr. does have Matthew Golden as number 1.
And he's not alone.
I know. What do you think Sean Payton does here?
I mean, I could definitely see wide receiver. I don't think that they would go defensive line depth. I mean, what is the consensus board? What's like best player available at this spot if you're looking at the consensus board?
Michael Williams, I believe, is top at 15 overall. Then Colston Loveland at 18. Matthew Golden at 20. Malachi Starks 21. Kenneth Grant's 22. That's who's remaining.
I mean, I think you're probably skipping over Michael Williams and looking at the next few names on that consensus big board.
Should I give them Matthew Golden as more of like a prediction? Because I go back and forth between what I want to do and what, doing some predictions and everything. I could see them getting, adding some receiver talent there for Bo Nix.
Yeah. I mean, either Golden or Ibuka, any of the next group of receivers worked in this group, to be honest.
I need Golden to go off the board. I mean, the Chargers could take Golden at 22. Let's go Matthew Golden to the Broncos here.
All right.
And now we got to figure out Omarion Hampton watch if he's going to fall out of my first round here, which could be the right play. Now, so it's pick 20. Do you want to recap?
All right. Recap from pick number 11. San Francisco 49ers got edge rusher Jalon Walker from Georgia. Dallas Cowboys got Tetairoa McMillan, wide receiver from Arizona. 13, the Miami Dolphins got Kelvin Banks Jr., tackle / versatile offensive lineman from Texas. 14, the Indianapolis Colts filled their tight end need with Tyler Warren from Penn State. 15, the Atlanta Falcons grabbed edge rusher Donovan Ezeirauku from Boston College. 16, the Arizona Cardinals grabbed Jahdae Barron, cornerback from Texas. 17, the Cincinnati Bengals got Walter Nolen, defensive tackle from Ole Miss. 18, the Seattle Seahawks grabbed linebacker Jihaad Campbell from Alabama. 19, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers grabbed Shemar Stewart, edge rusher from Texas A&M. And then pick number 20, the Denver Broncos just grabbed Matthew Golden, wide receiver from Texas.
Now, Sam, this is very important. I had heard of Skims before.
Yes.
But was very surprised to find out they're not now offering men's underwear. And we are here to tell you, as influencers, that that it's worth the hype. The Skims are worth the hype, Sam. You know how tough it is to find underwear, especially in my, 6'10" frame that fit, that are comfortable, unbelievably comfortable. We got our Skims. We got our Skims in the mail, Sam. Unbelievably comfortable. I've tried both, right? They were like, hey, choose. What do you like better, cotton or stretch? Both. They're both unbelievable. They both fit great. And we're here to endorse it.
Skims it's legit.
Baby. Yeah.
Absolutely legit. They send us particularly the cotton ones for me. Cotton boxer briefs. That's my go-to, right? I'm not the kind of, tiny whiteies thing. No. Just standard.
Briefs.
Yeah. Cotton boxer briefs. That's what I went for. And it's legit. I mean, absolutely. Not only was I happy to wear them, but they might be the best underwear that I currently are in possession of.
Yeah, we got a couple samples sent, and I need to order more, frankly, because
I say, look,
what I normally wear.
We have previously been sent underwear by people, right? I have other brands that shall remain nameless. This is definitely by far the best set of free underwear that's been sent in my direction.
You went there. So Skims offers those two types of boxer briefs for men, cotton or stretch. Cotton is designed for day-to-day use. Stretch, built for athletic performance. And you can shop Skims men at skims.com and Skims stores. Let them know we sent you from over here at Check the Mic after you place your order. This is very important so that we get the credit. We need the credit here on Check the Mic. So you're going to place your order, and then you select podcast in the survey. You have to do it and select our show, Check the Mic, in the drop-down menu. That's how Check the Mic gets proper credit, because we're a family here, right? And we're trying to give you a nice little family deal here. So Skims is the official underwear partner of the NBA, WNBA, and USA Basketball, and apparently now of Check the Mic. So once again, skims.com, Skims stores. After you place your order, select podcast in the survey, and then select Check the Mic.
I think really, if we can come out of this draft season, have successfully achieve the goal of getting Walt into some Skims underwear, I think everyone is a winner.
We're all winners here. We are all winners here. And back to pick. Where are we at? Pick 21. The Kenneth Grant pick for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Oh, that's where you want to go.
I'm out on Jackson. I don't think Jackson Dart's going in the first round. I just don't believe.
I don't think he should go in the first round.
I got Dano over here every day waking up arguing against nobody that Shedeur Sanders and Jackson Dart have to be first round picks, and I really like both and everything. I just don't know if I'm buying it. I don't know if I'm there on Dart going first.
I mean, we're guilty of this as anybody, right? But pre-draft period is like oversaturation. There's too many people to listen to, too much to watch. I can't keep track of where everybody is on every person, right?
Yeah, right.
Has Dano said a negative thing about a quarterback yet this draft season?
Let me just preface this. Appreciate Dano and the hard work that he does and everything. But no, he's generally that statement that Kevin O'Connell made last year, where he says players don't fail, organizations fail players. I mean, Dano lives that. Like, to his core, every quarterback is good or some level of good, and the only failure is in the coaching staff, the front office, the supporting cast, the offensive line. That's usually Dan's take. And he's a former quarterback. He's a quarterback defender. That's what he is. You just have to take that for a grain of salt when he's like naming 28 quarterbacks as top 15 QBs and 20 are in the top 10. You just have to take that with a grain of salt when he's, waxing poetic about absolutely everyone. But I get it, right? You want to see the best in guys. Here's how it could work. I get that angle, but you can't literally rank everybody as first rounders. You can't literally rank everybody as a top 10 quarterback. So at some point, you're being disingenuous.
Well, he's taking it even further than Kevin O'Connell. O'Connell's line was organizations fail quarterbacks before quarterbacks fail organizations. So his point was not that it never happens. It's just that usually speaking, it's the team letting the player down before the player lets the team down. Whereas Dano does appear to have taken it to the next step, which is just like, they're all good. And if they don't work out, it's somebody else's fault almost across the board.
Right. So I don't know. Again, I'd love to have Dano on the show, talk about it. I think he does great work. Some of the VR stuff that he's been doing is fantastic. He just we're just being honest here. He skews positive in QB evaluations.
Yes.
That's where he is. So anyway, with the Steelers, I'm going to assume, so here's the QB carousel here. Shedeur Sanders has gone to the Saints in this world. Aaron Rodgers will come out of the darkness and land in Pittsburgh at some point. And so they might draft a developmental player later. They don't have a second round pick. That's the other thing. If you're Pittsburgh, not having a second round pick is fine. You got DK Metcalf for that, but you don't have a second rounder. So I don't think they're in the market for let's have a developmental quarterback next to Aaron Rodgers this year. I just don't think they are, because then they don't pick another player until the third. So Kenneth Grant, interior disruptor for Pittsburgh, loading up on that defensive line. A lot of debate if they should, TJ Watt wants a new contract. He was doing some Instagram stuff, showing his displeasure. I cannot believe a Watt would take to Instagram to say that they want more money. I can't believe that they would stoop rather than just going straight in, man to man. Pay me the Myles Garrett money. That's what he did. So they're debating TJ Watt. Is he the long-term answer here in Pittsburgh? So more defensive line help with Kenneth Grant.
Yeah. Which, I mean, Cameron Hayward is still playing out of his mind despite his age somehow. But at some point, you would assume he's got to reach the end of his tenure there. Keanu Benton's a really nice player. But, man, yeah, Kenneth Grant would get a ton of work immediately and be a long-term answer for them.
They would be loaded. I like it. All right. Did I go gold? Can you scroll up a little bit? Now I'm starting to forget some of the picks. Is Walter Nolen still on the board? Did I take him?
Nope.
I'd sent him to Cincy. Okay, just making sure. Chargers are on the clock at 22. So give me Kenneth Grant to Pittsburgh, please. Yep. Chargers on the clock at 22. I've loved the receiver option here. Man, I put Emeka Egbuka at 5, and I think he's the guy. I think I like him more than that now. And nothing's changed. Like, I haven't watched him again. It's just remember when we described Egbuka? He's the guy that I think you described the tape the same way, but you value it differently. And you valued what he does lower than I did, and other people value it higher.
Well, the thing I think that's changed is that I think a lot of these other receivers are also exactly the same. It's just that you you convince yourself that they can be more than that. But actually, if they end up being what they look like, which is another guy that plays that inside / off the ball slot Z hybrid role, Ibuka is already extremely good at that, and I think everyone's very confident that he's good at that role. The other guys might not be that good at that role, but that might be the role they're in anyway. So I think if you sort of go, I don't love that role as a receiver. I'm looking for something more in terms of potential. But if you give me a handful of guys that are all going to end up in that role, Emeka Ibuka, you have to feel good about it because he's already an extremely high level player within that system.
Yeah, the more I watched him, it doesn't drop a ton of passes. He's got unbelievable ball skills at the catch point. I don't know if I'm talking myself into him here. I'm thinking about it. Trying to put myself into the headspace of the Chargers. So Luther Burden might have more upside than Ibuka.
I mean, does have more upside.
He does, right? I think he does. We put Jaden Higgins in this range. Consensus is lower on him. So I would play the board a little, I might go Ibuka here just because I look at the Lad McConkey's awesome. Colston Loveland's in play too, by the way.
Yeah.
Quentin Johnston, the volatility of him, the older Mike Williams in this receiving core. Would Justin Herbert with his Keenan Allen, right? His dependable, know what we're going to get from Ibuka type of guy. Would that be the right play? Colston Loveland is also in the mix.
I'm not. So yes, I understand where you're coming from in terms of wanting to rank him highly relative to some of these other guys that are available. But I think that's a product of, I don't love the top group, the quote unquote top group of these wide receivers, but I actually like the next group even better. So they all get sort of squished together and mushed in the same spot. I wouldn't draft Ibuka 22 overall if I thought I could get Jack Besh in the second round. I'm not even sure. In fact, I think Jack Besh might be a better player than Ibuka. And if I thought I could get him a round later, just in terms of value and playing the board, I think that's a way better way of doing it.
The other thing to consider here, I mean, there's a lot of places where I think the Chargers, they're not completely acute needs. I don't think they have a massive need on the edge, but it's a pretty good one. It's a pretty acute need at receiver and tight end. And you could argue running back, right? A lot of people have wanted to put running back here, but I think this is a nice, really nice draft to get somebody later. Really nice draft to not get somebody now and not go if they went to Marion Hampton here with a receiver need and a tight end need, and one of their they need a top 3 edge for their roster to go with Tuli Peloto and Khalil Mack. That would feel dirty, right? Going with a running back here.
Yeah, they have picks in the second, third round, fourth round, even that I think Hampton is I think he's running back 2 in this draft class, but I think the gap between him and the next group is significantly closer than it is between him and Ashton Jeanty. I don't think I would draft Hampton in the first.
And I see the chat asking about a defensive tackle and Derek Harmon. Yes, they could use an interior pass rusher as well. So we're sitting here with the Chargers, a receiver to complement Lad McConkey, a starting tight end like a Colston Loveland, a starting edge like a Michael Williams or a James Pierce, starting defensive tackle like a Derek Harmon. Any of those players could fit here. And that's actually not a great place to be, I think, if you're the Chargers. It's supposed to be kind of a rebuild, but, they feel like they're supposed to be a little bit closer than that. I think it's a big draft for the Chargers, is my point, because those needs are kind of serious. I think the value matches up. So where do I want to go here, Sam? I don't know.
I don't know. Where do you want to go? I mean, I think their needs are the wide receiver and the tight end position. I think they're the most acute. I would just pick your favorite player at that and grab him.
Let's go Colston Loveland. Not because of the Michigan connection. It's the next best tight end. A tight end option for Herbert. It gives us in the second round. We'll still have receiver options like we got McConkey last year. We'll have to attack the defensive line at some point as well. Packers are up at 23. This is where I'm going to go off the board a little bit here, Sam. We're just going to have some fun. Aaron Nagler, Cheesehead TV tweeted out today. Maxwell Hairston's the pick for the Packers, and here's why. Kentucky cornerback. I skimmed the article. That's all I needed. Get your skims, skims.com podcast. Check the mic. Make sure you click it. Maxwell Hairston, Kentucky quarterback to the Packers, because the fan sites said it. Every now and again, you got to, the fans know, right? I don't want to be the guy that gives them Luther Burden, and I got to hear about the first time in the Super Bowl era that they drafted a first-round wide receiver. I don't want to hear it. I just don't want to hear it. They've done the research. The fan sites know. They know what the teams like to do. They know who they've talked to. They know their 30 visits. They know when the buzz started. They know when lying season started. They put the puzzle together. And so I'm going to believe them. Maxwell Hairston's the pick here for the Packers.
What was the logic? Did you?
I told you I skimmed it. It was a little bit of like when the buzz started, and there
typically
who said, Daniel Jeremiah had him in a mock, and someone else said, I know that Nate Tice said, I know they like him about Hairston and the Packers, right? So there's enough sources around the league, and then Cheesehead TV put it all together,
right?
That Hairston's the pick. Who am I to argue?
Typically, when you skim stuff, it's to pick out the salient detail of which, why would be the one here.
I really want to do this mock because Steve D in the chat here is like, hey, you're ignoring me telling you Shedeur Sanders is going to be a Raider. I want this. I just want the most confident team source pick for every team and see what that looks like.
Picked.
Maxwell Hairston, cornerback. Fast, athletic cornerback for Kentucky. Dane, I'm a little bit lower on Hairston. I think Dane had him pretty high. Just to add some context, he's got him as corner 4. So if we're talking about, like on Dane's board, this makes perfect sense. Hairston's a first, second round grade. Travis Hunter, Will Johnson, Jahdae Barron are his top corners. This would be our friend Dane Brugler's next cornerback off the board. We'll have Dane on the show on Wednesday. Consensus board has him a little bit lower. He's at 36. But this is that's not that far, though. Like, it's not that far. You know what I mean? Like, when a player at 36 goes in the 20s, that's not a wild move. You know what I mean? That happens all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't even say it's even a massive reach. All right. Vikings at pick 24 here. What are your thoughts? Where would you go here for the Vikings? I need some advice. Oh, Derek Harmon. No. They got the other two. Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave are already in as can't stop the run pass rushers. we already have that.
This would be an interesting spot. I mean, I think we did this. We might have done this last time. Like, this would be an interesting Malachi Starks, halt the slide landing spot. They don't have an acute need. They've still got, Josh Metellus, Theo Jackson, Harrison Smith is still there. Obviously, Harrison Smith isn't there for long, but like, you could easily just say the value of Starks is too good at this spot.
I love Starks, man. I love that offensive weapon for Brian Flores. Continue.
You could grab any of the wide receivers. I mean, they need effectively the third option, but it doesn't, I don't think, matter too much if that third option is like what position effectively he plays as wide receiver. I think the current guys with Jefferson, Jordan Addison, like, they have the flexibility to be able to move around to accommodate whoever your third guy is. So you could take very different styled wide receivers, whoever your third guy, you think the third guy is, whether it's Burden, Ibuka, even, somebody like Jaden Higgins or Ayumanor that Trevor has extremely high, or whoever it is. I think you can make the argument that guy fits.
As the chat reminds, Jordan Addison has a pending DUI suspension, but I mean, that's, say, a 6-game suspension or whatever it's going to be. I'm not trying to downplay that at all. I'm just saying other than a year-long suspension, you're probably not going to make missing a few games dictate your draft strategy.
No, but it's multiple instances of boneheadedness, let's call them, for Jordan Addison at this point. So it's more like, sure, the 6 games isn't that important, but it's like, is he somebody we're going to commit, a big money second contract to at this point?
I think that's a better argument, right? I mean, if you're talking about where this team's going to be built, and Jefferson's he's at $35 million per year,
yeah,
and Addison's going to command. I mean, Addison's skills will command T. Higgins 28 to 30, like Brandon Ayuk maybe 28 to $32 million a year. Like, you probably can't do that. So the short and long-term play of, say, a Luther Burden is really interesting to me, Sam. I mean, if you're going to make the world the best for J.J. McCarthy, already love Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and T.J. Hawkinson. Burden added in the short term and potentially allowing Jordan Addison to walk at some point, go get paid elsewhere, maybe get receiver one money somewhere else, let someone else take that risk. I am really interested in that if I'm the Vikings.
Yeah, I mean, I think Burden has the most enticing upside of any of these receivers available from this point on. And then the flip side of that is, like, somebody like Ibuka gives you this incredibly high floor where you could draft him being extremely confident in both his character and his kind of baseline success rate, which again would allow you to move on from Jordan Addison if you wanted to do that, because not because he hasn't worked out or because of his lack of production, because at this point you can't necessarily trust him with that big long-term contract. So for different reasons, I think either one of those receivers works in this spot.
Oh man, I might have talked myself into Ibuka here for the Vikings. We may have done it. At running back, they have Aaron Jones. They brought in Jordan Mason as well from the Niners. Yep. I think that kept them out of forcing a running back pick. Now, they don't pick again until pick 97, unless there are some moves made in between there, figuring out, okay, what does the cornerback's the other spot that we've talked about a lot. Do you want to roll into the season with Mekhi Blackmon and Isaiah Rodgers as your starters? I think they brought in Rodgers to start, but could still use depth there. The next group of corners, Shavon Ravel, Trey Amos, whoever you want to rank there, Benjamin Morrison, all could be discussed. I might go Ibuka here, though, man. Really might. And just for, my favorite draft storylines, like the Packers and Ibuka were linked so much in so many mock drafts. And if the Packers didn't take him and then the Vikings take him in the division, just for the story. It's a great story. I'm doing this for our friend Matthew Collar. For Matt. Doing this for Matt, who's been trying to convince Vikings fans that receiver is the way to go. And maybe he's talking Burden. I'm talking Ibuka, though. I love it. I love the high floor Ibuka to go with the flexibility that it gives you with Addison and his future. But at worst, good luck covering Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Emeka Ibuka, TJ Hawkinson. Good luck. JJ McCarthy is going to be in the MVP conversation with these playmakers. That's what's happening here.
And like we've already seen, Ibuka is at his best when you already have a superstar wide receiver somewhere else, right? So the Vikings are one of those teams where you've got Justin Jefferson, you have that guaranteed gravity superstar to take the attention away. Ibuka can effectively thrive in the role that he's thrived in before, when you have a Marvin Harrison outside him, when you have a Jeremiah Smith outside him. Now you have a Justin Jefferson outside of him. He can still be the guy that we know is a very high level player at that role.
We got this. Let's do it. It'll be fun. It'll be fun. They could have taken a corner, could have taken a safety. We're getting another receiver. Bring it. That's how you win, baby. All right, Texans at 25. They've been going Josh Simmons in a lot of mock drafts here. Is there any reason to come off that?
Nope.
You're done. You ready to wrap the show up?
I mean, it's another one of those ones where, again, the chalk pick is the chalk pick for a reason. There's 3 or 4 picks in this draft where there's not a good reason for a team not to make that selection. The Jags with Mason Graham at the top, the Texans grabbing Josh Simmons, the tackle from Ohio State here, makes all the sense in the world, right? He could start immediately, maybe in a competition at right tackle if he wins the job from last year's second rounder, Blake Fisher, immediately. And he could start long-term at left tackle because Cam Robinson's probably not a long-term solution. So, and he's coming off, the knee injury, so maybe he doesn't need to start day one and you can ease him into it. It makes too much sense for everybody.
Let's do it. Somebody in the chat said the Texans don't like Simmons, though. If you got good information, I don't know. Maybe.
Oh, somebody in the chat says it. I'm sure the
chat said it. Chat would not lie. Do you think they would lie to me? Not our listeners, not our viewers, Sam. They wouldn't lie to me. That's all right, though. Josh Simmons to the Texans at tackle. So now, Mykel Williams still on the board here? I still haven't taken him, huh?
Yep.
Oh, he's a Raven. He's a future Raven. Where are my Ravens fans? Who do they want at 27? We got the Rams up first at pick 26. I keep giving them my favorite corner. Shavon Ravel, Trey Amos, Benjamin Morrison, Malachi Starks is still on the board. I think one of those players in the secondary, right?
Yeah, I mean, is this a potential halting spot again for Malachi Starks? We had that for the Vikings before they pass on. This time, would the Rams pass on him?
Maybe. I think Starks might be good here. Where are they? They have starters at all these positions, right? They've put themselves in position, as my depth charts go wonky on me. Come on, Jesse. You got to fix these things. I left Jesse with some bugs that are still out there, I think. Give me a minute. We got starters.
We've got the Camerons, Kitchens, and Curl.
You got the Camerons. But Starks is just a defensive playmaker. And you got Akello Witherspoon and Darius Williams on the at corner and Darian Kendrick. Like, you have depth. Kobe Durant. You have players. But I still think that's a really good play. Now, would they even go back to defensive line with a guy like Derek Harmon on the board? You know, sometimes you think, like, they just drafted 4 defensive linemen last year, got Kobe Turner the previous year. Is that enough? Is there ever enough? They don't have a Harmon body type. They have Poona Ford, Kobe Turner. They don't have a length type of body type like Derek Harmon here. But I see the Ravens people want the Ravens to get Derek Harmon. They don't want me to screw up that mock draft here.
Top players on the consensus board at this point still available. 15, Mykel Williams. 21, Malachi Starks. 23, Nick Emanwari for a very different style safety. Yeah. Marion Hampton, the running back, that's not in consideration. Jackson Dart. If you think he's a first-round player.
Let's really throw that. Like, we just throw Dart out there. Sit behind Stafford. I need something like that to happen on draft night. I got people complaining I'm too chalk. Now I ruined the mock. I mean, you guys complaining. Too many complaints.
Worst mock ever.
Worst mock ever. What do you think? Do you have any advice here?
I mean, I think at this point, Starks is looking like really good value. Would he? It's not an acute need. Both Camerons, I think, are fine, but equally, if Starks is really good, I think he could unseat one of them immediately and, be a long-term solution for them. But it's the kind of move you make if you think, man, this slide has just gone on too long.
I've struggled with the safety slide. I'm struggling with putting the safety in. Even if this draft isn't extremely deep, there's a lot of options at edge, defensive tackle, wide receiver. There's enough offensive linemen. Couple tight ends. Like, there's enough other positions that I don't want to pick safety, and I think that's why we've landed here with Starks, Emanwari still on the board. What about corner? Let's go. I've given him Ravel a ton, and I kind of like that. I'm just thinking if I should mix it up with Trey Amos, maybe.
Yeah, that's the group of 5 corners that are available that are kind of the next tier of corners.
I keep wanting to make a point that Ravel's a first rounder.
You do?
Yeah.
You're not alone.
Yeah. But I'd take him with the Bills at 30. Maybe that's what I'll do this time. Let's go Amos here for the Rams. Starks continues to fall. I'm going to let my Ravens people have their voice heard. We got some. Is it Drake Holiday? I mean, Drake Holiday. Is Drake want Harmon here? I think Mykel Williams would be such a Ravens pick here, though. If he lasted till 27, Mykel Williams.
I mean, I think a lot of the players on the board would make a ton of sense for them. I mean, this is another potential Malachi Starks landing spot. I know they've got a Darius Washington. Obviously, Kyle Hamilton is a superstar, but Hamilton and Marlon Humphreys position flexibility within that secondary allows them to plug in almost any secondary player that is available. You can find a way of accommodating it by moving one or both of those guys around. So they could halt, Stark, slide. The edge rushers, James Pierce Jr. is starting to become value at this spot. I wouldn't take him in the middle of the first round, but the later you get, the more I'm intrigued by him. As you said, Michael Williams feels like quite a Ravensy type of draft pick. And then Derek Harmon makes some sense as well.
Really quick, I was trying to make a point to get Josh Connerly in there. I could see Connerly being the pick for the Texans, not Simmons. I should have done that. Can we undo it?
No.
It's too late. We could go through it later and just put it out on social that I really wanted to switch that.
No.
Oh, the Raven. But draft night, man, we're going to be sitting here saying, man, there's like 10 guys that would be great picks here. There's some depth here in this range in the draft. I like this. Starks. I just think if Michael Williams falls, now I'd love to give him to the Lions. The next pick. Let's go, Derek. I'm gonna keep letting Starks fall. Let's go, Derek Harmon to the Ravens. Because some good players are available here. A big reach on the PFF board. The Lions are taking Michael Williams. He's still out there.
Yep.
Kid's young. He's fallen. I didn't do anything crazy to have him fall, right?
No, I don't think him falling would be a shock at all, actually, to be honest.
I want to highlight this for people, though, right? Because I always joke. I mean, like, once a guy gets picked, you just have this, like, this is where he was picked. This is where he was valued. I mentioned Michael Williams' name around 10 to 15, right? Like, that could happen. And then he goes at 28. But I think with the Lions, an unexpected fall for Michael Williams, the need on the edge, I think this is a great play here for Detroit. And I continue to struggle where I want to put safeties.
So we're grabbing Michael?
Yeah, let's go Michael.
Yeah, I don't think him sliding in the draft would be. I mean, I had him as edge 7 in this draft.
Yeah.
And, that's generally speaking the kind of number that you may end up getting in the first round. Like, it wouldn't take much to have him available at the bottom of the first.
I didn't do anything wild here, but Omarion Hampton's still on the board. Like, a bunch of players who are normally going in the top 20 in a lot of mock drafts. Michael Williams, Omarion Hampton. And it's not like I did things crazy to have them still available here, I don't think. Washington on the clock here at pick 29. Are they the Starks landing spot?
They could definitely accommodate him.
Yeah. Maybe that's the best place for Malachi Starks here. Will Harris, Quan Martin, Percy Butler, Jeremy Reeves, special team ace. Yeah, let's grab Malachi Starks here for Washington at pick 29.
Instant upgrade.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think they could have gone defensive line or edge, but I think they'll have some value there. There's enough depth there.
Given the options, you would definitely choose Starks over Emanwari for them.
I would, yeah. I would say I like Starks as a better player. Anytime I put Emanwari in a first rounder, I think we gave him to Seattle at one point at 18. It was more of a projecting that athleticism and maybe how the NFL might move him up. I think Starks is a better football player, though. More versatile.
All right.
Bills at 30. Chavon Ravel? I want Chavon. Have they grabbed a corner yet? Because they were linked to Asante Samuel Jr. quite a bit. I think Chavon would be a great pick for the Bills here. Any defensive?
I mean, it fits the mold of the corners that they want.
Any of the next defensive linemen that they might want here?
I mean, you've got the question of what James Pierce is. Like, I think on the field, Pierce's tape warrants a mid-first round pick. I think given the concerns around him, he's going to slide more into this range, but at some point that becomes the debate.
Now, Pierce added to the Buffalo room. I mean, you're not drafted for 1 year, of course. One of my axioms. Let's not forget that. But in this room that's really deep right now, the whole defensive line is extremely deep. You can ease him in and learn from a whole bunch of professionals. Greg Rousseau, AJ Epinesa, Michael Hoyt, Joey Bosa. And you just add Pearson there and just go ahead, compete, see what you got. So it's not necessarily it's not a short-term need, certainly, but a long-term, hey, if you could get that get a Pierce as a starting edge, a guy that's got top 10 talent at pick 30, that's intriguing. Chavon Riveldo I think is a top 15 talent at corner coming off the injury and fits a massive need. So I think that's where I'm going to go here for Buffalo. East Carolina. Get him over there.
East Carolina.
We're flying, man. We're at 2.5 hours with 2 picks left. We were on a 3-hour pace, man. Now we're flying. Now, I haven't told the people yet, Sam. Have not told the people yet. However, did you agree to do this? Tomorrow, bonus show, second round, based off this mock draft. We're going to do a whole second round tomorrow, bonus show. Are you still in? You going to do it? I'll do it myself if you don't want to do it.
I kind of want to see that, actually. You just operating your own mock draft sim and doing your own
I know how to operate a mock draft sim. I can do it. I know how to operate
allegedly.
this thing.
No evidence of that yet.
I let you have your time to shine here. So tomorrow we're gonna stack a second rounder on top of this. You gonna join us? Everybody gonna join us for a second rounder on top of my first round? There's so many good players available. Kansas City at 31. All right, Mike G is very upset if Kansas City. They will not take a tackle. Do not give them a tackle. They're not taking a tackle. Although the player that I wanted to give the Texans at 25, he wouldn't let me switch it. Josh Connerly. I think Connerly is going to go in the. Now that I'm hearing Mike Tice, not Nate, right? Nate's dad, Mike, former Vikings head coach, has Josh Connerly as his number 1 offensive lineman. Not saying that's changed my opinion on him, but it changes my opinion on what the NFL could be thinking about for Josh Connerly. Could he be a top 20-ish type of pick, or at least go in the 20s? And that actually would be good value here for Kansas City at 31.
What about Gray Zabel? Come in, start day 1 at left guard.
Gray Zabel's not always available here in our mocks. And that would solve Mike D's angst here against a tackle. You get a guard instead. How about that? Starting guard. I think Zabel could be good. Good value. Anyone else I'm missing that should be available?
They have a lot of, they can go, they need a defensive line depth. I mean, James Pierce, again, is still an option. Nick Scorton would be an option. Very wildly different body type, different style of defensive lineman. But Scorton, I think, would be an option. Landon Jackson, I think, could sneak into the first round. I had Braden Swinson sneaking into the first round. I don't think that's crazy. The interior guys, Tyler Booker from Alabama, Donovan Jackson from Ohio State, I think are both possible first-round guys. Darius Alexander is possibly a first-round candidate.
There's a bunch, right? This is why we have to do a second round. We got to do a second round on top of this. What if we mix it up and go James Pierce here for Kansas City? Go with the defensive line. We're going to play the upside play here for Kansas City. They theoretically have starters on the offensive line. They're just unproven. And so we keep wanting to give them the more proven offensive line or give them more options, just throw more darts on the offensive line. The danger in that, though, is if you throw too many darts in one area, you got no darts anywhere else. And the defensive line is losing some depth. And if they take Pierce, this is going to be like, how did you let the Chiefs get a 4-2 receiver like Xavier Worthy? How did you let the Chiefs get James Pierce? So let's do that, because it also keeps us from giving the Eagles James Pierce. How did Howie do it? James Pierce.
Other thing, they've done it before, but maybe they could draft a running back at the bottom of the first round with Omari and Hampton. I mean, they've got guys, but are any of those guys the guy?
No, I just don't know why they brought all of them in, because they easily could have they opted into Elijah Mitchell and brought back someone else. Who else was it? Brought back Kareem Hunt. You have Pacheco heading into his final year. Yeah, none of them are good enough to keep you from a running back. I also don't think they're going to, look back to their Clyde Edwards-Helaire pick at pick 32 and say, yeah, we need to do that again. All right. Pick 32, Philadelphia Eagles. Who does Howie steal this year? Would they pick a safety here? They wouldn't take Nick Emanwari, right?
Possible.
Do I listen to the chat again? They like Josh Connerly.
Yeah. Big board, best players available. Emanwari at 23, Marion Hampton at 25, the running back from North Carolina. Jackson Dart, obviously that's not. Gray Zabel, 28, the North Dakota State offensive lineman. Tyler Booker, the guard from Alabama we talked about.
Booker could be interesting, but I think offensive and defensive line is the place. Defensive line in particular, they need to replenish. There is some depth there. They have the history. I could say, they have the history of getting the tackle a year early, even though theirs didn't work out with Andre Dillard. But Connerly as the future replacement for Lane Johnson. We just ignore the one bad rep that he had at right tackle against Mike Green and assume that he'll get better at his right tackle footwork, right? That's what we're doing.
Sure.
Let's do it. I want to get Connerly in the first round. Do Josh Connerly. Let's get Josh Connerly in there.
And there we go.
And there it is. We'll pick it up tomorrow with a whole second round. We'll be faster tomorrow. We probably won't do 2.5 hours, right? We'll just fly through. We'll give ourselves an hour and just crank out year 2. How about that? Who did I betray? I did not betray anybody. What did I do? What did you want? What did I miss? This is a great mock draft. This is probably how it's going to happen on draft night. Put it out there. This was fun. Did I miss anything? 2 hours and 36 minutes here. Presumably missed something. That's my mock draft. How do you feel? Is this the worst mock you've ever seen?
Yeah, definitely. Everyone is.
We should do let's do a recap of our mock. How well did I do? So tune in tomorrow. Never know when we're going to go live, so hit the subscribe button. We'll go live at some point tomorrow. Maybe 10:30. 10:30 is a good time. In 10:30 Wednesday, 10 o'clock Wednesday, actually, with Dane Brugger, a half hour early. 10:30 again on Thursday. We got cornerback rankings coming up. We got a lot coming up over the next couple weeks. So round 2 tomorrow. We've got Dane on Wednesday. The Chris Sims episode looks like it's going to be next week, next Tuesday. We'll talk to Sims about all of his rankings and everything. We have in the works a 3-round mock draft, which will take 8 to 12 hours, 3-round mock at some point. And we have the viewer mock draft next Wednesday, day before the draft. And then most importantly, we're here all draft weekend, live Thursday night, live Friday night, live after round 1, after rounds 2 and 3. So we'll just be going nonstop here. Check the mic. You have to be subscribed. Just go. If you have not pressed the button, just go do it right now. Just go press the button while you're here on YouTube. And if you're listening in podcast land, you're going to have to go to YouTube, search Check the Mic, and press subscribe so that you're still with us the entire weekend. Plus Saturday, you never know when we're going to go live day 3 of the draft. Something crazy is going to happen. We're going live. That's what we're doing. So thanks to everybody for tuning in today for my mock draft. We'll be back again tomorrow with more Check the Mic. We'll do a round 2 mock tomorrow. We'll see you then.